from the beginning.
And I was shown that that Lucifer would return, that the UN and the Vatican were going to be completely behind it, again, under false pretenses. He's going to show up and say, I'm here to save the day, right? And, okay, fine, you know.
Yeah, of course,
ahead,
you can say whatever you want. But I've always hated censorship. It's the internet.
Sometimes, you know, once they get you for your first love bite, well, it depends on how aware you are, right?
I forgot my bullets. I never had a gun. Here I am left standing. Am I the only one? For what I see, memories have gifted me. I'll never see the sun.
First of all, as you know, the Anunnaki and the Draco are enemies. Second of all, underneath Baghdad was a stargate that was created by the Anunnaki so that they could transfer from Jupiter to the Earth.
I'll never see the sun. I could just end it all, but the demons will have won.
Magical practitioners that, you know, some are good and some use their magic for good and to heal and to help, and others do use it for evil. And, you know, in some cases, you know, people really were using it.
This is too much sometimes.
From the... Wait for it. Broken Ruins of Babylon! This is End of Days Radio. And I am your host, Daniel, broadcasting all the way to you from the broken... Wait, what? From the broken ruins of Babylon. Sorry, from the shimmering Emerald City right here in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. The date is February 9th, 2018. We're very close to Valentine's Day. Who will be your Valentine this year? Will it be Bill the Pig or perhaps Sally the Pony? Ew, what are you talking about, Daniel? Today's date, again, is February 9th, 2018. And what a great day today is. There's so much in the news. So many hilarious things that we need to talk about later. Such as the recent space commercial with the Tesla flying out in space, thanks to our buddy Elon Musk. Also, Quincy Jones has had quite a bit to say. We're going to talk about his comments about the Beatles and Michael Jackson and all of that. We're going to talk about the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And we've got a lot more news stories. But that's after the fact. The first thing we need to do is talk to our guest. And we have a very, very special guest for you today. It's none other than rebel activist Adam Kokesh. Once again, joining us here on End of Days Radio. Adam Charles Kokesh is an American activist identifying as a libertarian. Kokesh has called for a new American revolution and has announced plans to run for president in 2020 on the platform of an orderly dissolution of the federal government. Ooh, I like that. I like that. And we'll be talking to him in just minutes. Very exciting. He's been through a lot lately. I understand he's been arrested. He's had his home ransacked. He's been through a lot. I was watching some of his videos on YouTube. Good stuff. Check out his YouTube channel. And remember to go to endofdaysradio.com for all things End of Days Radio. If you want to get a list of upcoming guests or you'd like to chat in our forum or listen to old episodes or even donate to the show, you can go to endofdaysradio.com for everything End of Days. So let's quit wasting time and dial up Adam. Might as well, right? Let's see here. Doop, 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 doop. Okay, let me grab a sip of coffee before I do this, because I do love wasting everybody's time while I sip coffee. Okay, enough. Let's do this.
Hello.
Hello, Adam.
How's it going?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Excellent. Is my audio all right?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's fine.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have you here once again on End of Days Radio. I understand that you've been through quite a lot recently, and I just don't know where to start.
Well, I guess the most important crux of the story, and you might say it's going through a lot, but for me, as part of the cost of doing business and standing up for freedom, I'd say 10 days in jail is a pretty low starting point for a price point for me. But it was what began on January 16th when we formally announced my presidential campaign for the Libertarian nomination on the platform of dissolving the entire federal government of the United States in a peaceful, orderly, responsible manner. That I was pulled over within 5 minutes of our email going out, and then again about 40 minutes later, and was very obviously wrongfully arrested as probable cause for searching my RV, which had my dog in it at the time. They brought out a drug dog, and you can tell in the video that my dog is inside at the time. And it's hard to say what exactly was in the arresting officer, Trooper Garcia's head at the time, but it was very clear that, I told him he was being broadcast on Facebook Live. Maybe he didn't believe it, but from the horror stories I've heard since then from residents of Wise County, Texas, that what they're used to doing is arresting people, and they don't care if they're filming, because once they're in jail, they'll just get into their phones and erase the footage. But in my case, it was broadcast live. I was able to, when he unlawfully ordered me to stop filming, and I complied. I was not attempting to physically resist. When someone, when a police officer, generally speaking, my policy, when a police officer gives you an unlawful order, is to question it if possible. If he's pointing a gun at you and yelling at you to do something, you should just comply. But I would question it, and if they stand by it, then I'm complying under duress and making it clear that I'm doing so. And in this case, I was ordered to stop filming, but I was able to press post, and all my live videos from the arrest got up on Facebook. And you can see that my dog is in the vehicle when they have the drug dog, which is really just a probable cause generator, which is a whole other travesty of the war on drugs, which is the war on drug users, which means it's a war on you. And I ended up, so I got arrested and was taken in. And the question here is, was this just a strange coincidence? And it's possible. I look at this and I always say never ascribe to conspiracy what can be adequately explained by incompetence. And in this case, it's a whole lot of incompetence, but also a sort of amount of evil. But unfortunately, we can say that this kind of evil has become normal in the war on drugs, and particularly in Texas. And so, that you could say it could be just a coincidence. But if you watch the video, and it's up on my DTube channel, which you can find at my steemit.com account. If you go to steemit.com/@Adam Kokesh. Excuse me, and if I may, as an aside, I think it's beautiful that we have blockchain-based social media already functional in such a vibrant way. A lot of it's in its, early phases, but steemit.com now with DTube and DSound and everything else is really amazing. And if you want to find out, you can find all my social media stuff from my main website, which is thefreedomline.com. And so we have all the video. It's all out there. And the question then becomes, if this wasn't just a coincidence, where did Trooper Garcia's orders come from? Was it, was it motivated by his own personal vendetta? I don't like a guy who stands up for freedom because I hate freedom because, I'm a drug warrior cop. Or was it, someone in his department saying, hey, we can't let this guy get away with this? So, on the far end of the conspiracy spectrum, I've heard this. I don't think this is very likely, but Donald Trump doesn't want the competition in 2020, so he's going to have his political opponents falsely arrested and slandered through this legal process, or rather this illegal process. And I think that's really unlikely, but the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. There certainly is a right-wing movement. It might not have been Donald Trump, but it just might have been somebody with some real hardcore right-wing, anti-drug sort of views.
Yeah.
And
now just my platform is, again, the peaceful, orderly, responsible dissolution of the United States federal government, because we don't have to be united under one government to be united in American values. And in fact, the concentration of power under the federal government today is completely anti-freedom and un-American. So what I'm proposing is an idea that has great mass appeal. And from what we found so far is that it's kind of like the message of freedom itself. You don't wake up to this idea of self-ownership and ethics and apply to politics and then go back to sleep. It's like you cannot unsee what you have seen. And I think similarly, all we have to do to win is get this message in front of the American people in a straightforward, credible way and say, look, we've got a plan. We've got an executive order. I'm not running for president so much as for not president. What I'm going to be doing with this is I go in on the first day. The only thing I would do as president, we have to figure out the exact legal mechanics of this still, but basically I might be president for 5 seconds. I might not be president at all. I might say, I might not swear in as president and simply say, with the authority vested in me through the American electoral process, I am signing this executive order to dissolve the federal government. And with this, I resign to become custodian of the federal government. I'm going in like a bankruptcy agent. So, in most federal agencies, 90+% of the personnel are going to lose their jobs on the first day. Now, we are going to arrange for some kind of severance package. They are going to have 2 months notice from, the election to taking office here. But this is a huge threat. There are a lot of corrupt forces who have an interest in the continuation of this corrupt enterprise known as the Corporation of the United States Federal Government. And I feel that what I'm doing is not, going in to take over or to use the system to fix the system. No, what I'm doing is turning the American presidential election into a referendum on whether or not the federal government should be allowed to exist at all. And some people will say, well, Adam, that's illegal. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Yes, that's kind of the point. We are invoking the higher authority known as the Declaration of Independence, which says that we as a people have it not only a right but a duty to alter and abolish systems of government that no longer serve us. And this is, like I said, it's an idea that has mass appeal because we don't have to we don't have to argue philosophy. We don't have to talk about the role of government. If we can all agree that government should be as local as possible, as close to the community, as close to the individual as possible. And even as a libertarian, I know this might sound hard for a lot of libertarians to accept, but most human beings are never going to care about what we care about. They're never going to engage in, the kind of philosophical study that led most of us to be libertarians. They're not going to read a bunch of books, but human beings are creatures of pragmatism. So if we want to achieve a libertarian society, a voluntary society, one where individual rights are respected, in a sense, we have to put aside our ideology, but apply our principles to create policy that immediately improves everyone's lives. And that's what this is. So we don't have to convince people of any particular vision. We don't have to argue about the role of government. We say, look, we're just going to get rid of this most disgusting, destructive, wasteful layer of fat at the top. And that's 3 million, only 3 million personnel out of 22 million who work for government at the state, local, and federal levels altogether. So most functions of government will still continue, but we're going to get rid of the worst corruption and, this idea of trying to force everybody into a one-size-fits-all solution, where you end up with people in San Francisco writing laws for people in San Antonio, which really, in and of itself, should be offensive to anyone with common sense.
And Adam, you're being very clear on this. You're not interested in money, and you certainly aren't interested in power of any kind. You don't want to be a leader. You don't want to lord over everybody. You don't want to give orders or dictate really anything. You just want to kind of be a catalyst to achieving an absolute form of freedom, right?
Absolutely, and thank you for pointing that out. I've been a full-time activist in one capacity or another for 11 years now. And, I made a lot of money in independent media production, but I always find myself as a broke activist over and over again because I put everything I have back into the cause. I know that, especially when we're talking about Federal Reserve notes, it's almost a liability to have money in the world today. I'd rather have the ability to serve my principles and serve what I believe in. And so that's how I've always approached my activism. And yeah, it's now I'm at a point where I'm very well organized. I'm much more productive. I'm doing very well on Steemit, and I have a very solid income there. But even then, all of that is going into this campaign right now.
And you're doing what many, well, I wouldn't say many, but some leaders in the past have done, where when you find yourself actually being locked up, you're using the time very efficiently to read and to actually write. Do I have that correct?
Well, I did write a book the last time I was in jail a few years ago when I was there for 4 months. I started writing a book, I should say, to be truly humble about it. I was there for 4 months, and I came up with the idea and started writing Sections of Freedom, which is my manifesto of how we create a more peaceful, productive, and harmonious society by dissolving government altogether, localizing it eventually down to the individual or down to voluntary community-based organizations. And while I was in jail this last time, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I only did 10 days, and I did spend a lot of time on the phone. I had pretty good access to the phone, so I was able to communicate with my team. I have a great team behind me now in the campaign and my staff in general, so I knew that I wasn't going to be forgotten or disappeared or anything like that while I was locked up. But I didn't have access to pen and paper for the first 8 days or so I was in jail. So I had like scraps of paper. I had a little jail pen, and I was making notes. But yeah, I was able to use my time effectively. And it's really funny. This last 10-day stint for me was, on one hand, the hardest time that I've ever done in some awkward, painful elements of this. The food was terrible. I've been in a lot of jails. This one had by far the worst food. Like it was painful to eat every meal that came on tray wraps. I was actually they had for lunch they had ham and cheese sandwiches. That was very typical. But I would look forward to that meal, even though for me it's a very light meal to get 2 little ham and cheese sandwiches. I'm not a small dude. I'm about 200 pounds. And when I got the tray meals though for breakfast and dinner, I couldn't finish. Like it hurt to eat. It was that bad, and I was just like it was just unbearable. But if I didn't, so I would eat half the meal, I'd have to stop and catch my breath and then finish eating. But then it was, I won't tell you about the digestive problems, but I'll just say that it was a good thing I had a toilet to myself in my cell. And while I was there, but the way it was the easiest time, on one hand was the access to the phone, which was nice. But the other one was I had a TV in my cell. I guess that's why they call it television programming, right? They're happy to program inmates and use it to keep people docile. But I really felt just like Donald Trump. Instead of Twitter, I was writing notes and pen and paper, but I'm laying in bed eating terrible food, watching cable news. So in that sense, it was very easy time. I spent a good chunk of it watching C-SPAN and Fox and CNN.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they actually had the TV in the cell. Do they do that for everybody now?
Well, not everybody across the United States, but in this particular jail. Now, in this case, I refused to comply with the medical screening. Excuse me, because they were trying to give me a TB test, and this is just, by the way, sidebar on this, a sad little part of the government racket in general is that, and from the very casual math that I did, it's less than 1 in 20,000 chances. I mean, the last time I heard of someone, with tuberculosis, it was from, it was Doc Holliday, right? In Wyatt Earp or,
Tombstone.
Like, when was the last time you heard of Americans? Yeah. Or what was, I'm sorry, I'm screwing it up, but,
no, you got it.
Last time you heard?
You got it. Doc Holliday.
Okay.
Yeah, Doc Holliday in that. Well, one of the movies about him was Tombstone, but he was well known for having the TB.
Tombstone. Right, that's it. Tombstone. That's what I screwed up. But yeah, Tombstone. Maybe it's in Wyatt Earp too. But yeah. So the odds of any American coming into any particular jail at any given point having tuberculosis are less than 1 in 20,000. It's insanely low. And yet they have to give, by law or something, every single person who comes into the jail a tuberculosis test. And I just said, look, it's against my religion to let the government put needles in my body. I'm not going to do that. And when they asked me medical questions, I said, am I legally required to answer that? And if not, I declined to state. So although even if I was legally required, I probably would have engaged in some civil disobedience there anyhow. And so I was in medical isolation with and I had to wear a dust mask anytime I left my cell or used the phone through the slot in the door, it's just silly. But someone's making a lot of money off those tuberculosis tests.
And just to backtrack a little bit, how long was this police officer, Officer Garcia, how long was he following you before he decided to actually pull you over?
That I can't say. I don't know. But I was pulled over approximately, and I haven't checked the timestamp. Someone told me it was 40 minutes apart, the two instances that I was pulled over. And if you watch the video, whenever I talk to police officers, unless they need to be put in their place for some reason. And by the way, I always have fun with this. The flags that they do with the thin blue line, where they take the American flag and one of the stripes they replace with a blue line. That's a violation of U.S. flag code. Now, it doesn't really apply on a T-shirt or on a computer graphic or anything like that, but they do actually have these flags that they have made, which are a bastardization of the official U.S. flag. So anytime I see that, I like to point out to an officer, like, hey, that's a violation of U.S. flag code right there. You're not allowed to deface the U.S. flag or create derivative versions that are not officially authorized by the United States federal government. But it's okay. If you take that down right now, I'm going to let you off with a warning. Just remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And I've actually pulled this online with a number of officers who have it as their, profile on Twitter or background pic on Facebook or whatever. And they've taken them down, which is just kind of a fun way. But, generally speaking, when I'm talking to police officers, I'm very polite, I'm very direct, but I'm also very friendly, and I tell them about what I'm doing, with my campaign and with the message of freedom. And in this case, the first time I got pulled over, I got a warning for, I forget what it was now, because the officer said I was swerving, and I had a temporary tag, and that was enough reason to pull me over. So he pulled me over, gave me a warning, and I gave him a copy of my book, Freedom. And by the way, you can get it for free in every digital format possible, including audiobook at thefreedomline.com. 3 words, thefreedomline.com. And it's also translated into half a dozen other languages there. And so I gave him a copy of the book. And if I was trying to be, less conspiracy minded, I would say, well, maybe he saw the book and, he didn't like freedom because, they're freedom hating drug warriors in Texas, mostly, from not just my experience, but from everything I've heard and read about the police state there. So, maybe they said, hey, he's coming down your way, pull him over and see if you can bust him or what you can do to mess with him. But, I'm always friendly, and I tell the police officers generally, look, hey, a lot of you guys joined with honorable intentions. Like, you wanted to serve and protect. You wanted to help your communities. But unfortunately, because we have government in between us, you don't get to serve the people directly. You end up serving politicians. And then you end up, instead of being, a public servant or someone who's, helping out with the public safety or protecting people, you end up being a law enforcer. And you're an enforcer of unjust laws. You're an enforcer of evil on behalf of corrupt politicians. And I want what I'm advocating it's not for you to lose your job. Although, of course, if we got rid of the drug war, there'd be, tons less need for public safety services in general, obviously. But, I don't want you to lose your job. I want you to be able to serve people directly, which is still true because, those people who at least have that genuine good intention will find other ways of meeting real human needs when we get government down to the community level and eventually dissolve it entirely.
It does make you wonder about some of those experiments that they did, 10, 15 years ago, where they took the college kids and they let like half of them be in control of the other ones.
Stanford prison experiments.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, definitely. It kind of shows you how people can kind of become bullies in the right situation.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't think there's such a thing as a really bad person. My undergraduate degree was in psychology, which is why I'm very familiar with that. And I think the other one that goes hand in hand with it is the Milgram obedience studies, where, they asked people to shock other test subjects. So they weren't really shocking them, but to see how obedient people would be, to an authority just in a white lab coat. And it is really this is something that every human being needs to be aware of because it is a real weakness in human nature, if you will, that we are so susceptible to exercising unjust power, to being violent over others, and to being fooled and manipulated by, someone wearing a shiny badge or in a white lab coat or in a suit and tie because, they're a politician. And the more that we're aware of this, the more we can resist those impulses.
And it's also interesting, not to get too racial, but I know that at some point the black communities, they decided to have the Black Panthers do the policing instead of having the white cops police them. And that's really interesting too. And I think that's a little bit more in line with how you believe things should be handled.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right to bring race into this in this context because the drug war is fundamentally racist. This government is fundamentally racist, and it has been since its inception. A lot of the origins of the police force in this country came about protecting property like slaves. And since then, there have been systematic efforts to keep black people oppressed in America. And I'm really glad that you mentioned even the modern example of the Black Panthers, which were primarily, more than a political organization, they were really a community organization. And I'm a huge advocate of every activist, and I think an activist is someone who's motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice. So, anybody who, even yourself as an independent media producer, I think you're an activist, right? I mean, you have motivations for doing what you're doing that are not, I want to be heard and I want to make money. So there must be something, truly just that motivates you there. And I think everybody who's an activist of any kind needs to understand what COINTELPRO was. And COINTELPRO is a portmanteau to create an acronym, and it was for the three words Counterintelligence Program. And this was an FBI program in the 60s and 70s to mess with activists. And when you see these assassinations by cop of a lot of the Black Panthers, it was set up by the FBI. And if you look at this history, you see that there were a lot of other subversive things that the FBI did during those times. And back then it was primarily focused on the anti-war movement and the Black Panther movement. And there's some great quotes that have come out in the years since. And I apologize for not getting this one exactly correct. But it was someone working for Nixon who said that the reason they created the war on drugs was so that they would have a greater excuse to mess with anti-war activists and to mess with the black community. So they demonized marijuana and heroin. And those were the ones that they were of course, feeding into these communities. And this is, you look at the modern versions, that we're aware of, like with the CIA bringing crack and cocaine into LA and especially the poor, vulnerable communities there in the 80s. So the reason that COINTELPRO was exposed, they did a lot of what they called bad jacketing, which is just slander campaigns against effective activists to make them less effective. So you have to wonder, the only reason they got exposed is because a very, very brave group of activists broke into an FBI office and they stole these documents although I'd hardly call it stealing when it's really just holding people accountable for much, much worse, disgusting, evil crimes. And they got the documents about the counterintelligence program. And, you have to wonder how much more was there that they didn't find the documentation for, of course. But they were able to get these documents to major newspapers, and they made, mimeographed copies, using that ancient technology and hold them accountable. So the FBI was, exposed, and they said, oh, our bad. We're going to stop doing that. The counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, is no more. We'll stop messing with activists. And you go, okay, yeah, right. So my point is that if you study this history and you're an activist today, you know that they didn't just stop messing with activists. It's just taken different forms and probably much more subtle forms. And so I think today what you have is, especially with the control of the information flow on the internet, you have misinformation campaigns, you have false arrests like mine, although I got to say it's a relatively minor one when you compare it to the cases of, say, Schaefer Cox, the Alaskan activist who was set up for creating community-based safety organizations that challenge the government monopolies. Ross Ulbricht, who created the Silk Road, allegedly, to make the drug war much safer, make access to drugs. And it's funny, they're trying to slander him now with this, it's a murder mystery because he tried to get someone killed. And that's total nonsense. The real murder mystery here is, since so many children who need CBD oil in order to not die from their seizure problems, we're getting their medicine through the Silk Road. Why is the federal government willing to murder children? Although murder here, you might say, is metaphorical. Why are they willing to use violence against someone like Ross Ulbricht, who's a peaceful man, trying to get people safer access to medicine, and let children die because they don't have access to that? That's the real Silk Road murder mystery. And then even like my friend, and by the way, I am in correspondence now with both Ross Ulbricht and Schaefer Cox, which is really. Really an honor to be able to write letters to them in jail, and I encourage people to do that as well. But my personal friend, Thomas Costanzo, known as Morpheus Titania, who is in jail still in federal prison. And I got to say, he doesn't have to, well, no, he does have to be in jail right now. He's been denied bail. But he could have pled out. But no, he's standing his ground and challenging the charges that he's facing for running an unlicensed money transmitting business, because he was buying and selling Bitcoin in all over the valley in Phoenix, and he's doing time for that right now.
Oh, and, that's not illegal,
there's
is it?
So many.
Is that illegal?
Yeah. I mean, look, the average American commits 3 felonies a day. There's a book by that name written by I think it's a Columbia law professor. If you want to look it up, it's called 3 Felonies a Day. Because the government has made so many things illegal, and most of these are financial things, that if you sell or buy anything without reporting it, that's illegal. According to IRS tax code, technically, anytime you barter something that's $20 in value or more, you're supposed to report that on your taxes. Of course, it's totally unenforceable and ridiculous. But it's just them saying, well, we can arrest anybody at any time we feel like it, because we don't like you because you're challenging our racket. And that's, part of the sickness of the police state that we live in.
And they also, one person that they definitely went over, and I feel that this is covered up quite a bit, was none other than Martin Luther King, who is like the most famous African-American activist of all time.
Yes, of course. Of course.
And that's super disturbing to me, because we have a friggin' Martin Luther King Day, and most people do not know that the FBI tried to blackmail friggin' Martin Luther King. Our government did something extremely racist and extremely oppressive, and it wasn't even that long ago.
Well, I'd like to think that at this point in history, now that my campaign has so much momentum, and I know this is a low bar to say that we cleared here, but thanks to Trooper Garcia, thanks to Sheriff Aiken in Weiss County and the ordeal that I went through in this false arrest, we had the most successful launch of a Libertarian presidential campaign in history. Now, again, low bar to clear, but we were able to get the basic message out to approximately 10 million Americans through the media coverage of this, and it should have been a lot more. Of course, we had a mainstream television blackout of this, but we got the message, Adam Kokesh, Libertarian presidential candidate, dissolve the entire federal government. And I think the cat's out of the bag. I think the people in charge know that their time is limited, that in the age of the internet, government is so laughably obsolete that they're really just trying to get their last licks in and get what they can, suck what money they can out of the system. But I think they fundamentally know that this era of statism, of central violent control, is coming to an end for humanity. We are evolving past it, and it is really a beautiful thing to be a part of, to watch and to experience. And so with this campaign, we have drawn a big fat line in the sand. And like I said, it's not something that you can unlearn once you have learned. Once you see that this is a possibility, that America would be so much better off, so much more free, so much more safe, so much more prosperous, so much more American if we were to dissolve the federal government in a manner that I'm proposing, then, it's just, it has a sense of, for me at least, the way that I see this now, and I hope for people who are paying attention, there's kind of a sense of inevitability about this. And I think they know their days are numbered.
Adam, are you still on social media, or have you been having some problems with getting censored and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask, because I've dealt with censorship on social media, my entire time as an activist, from, even criticizing Obama. I had, and this is a silly, petty example, but I had a photograph of one of his drone strike victims, a young girl who was at a wedding and ended up being burned over most of her body. And the photograph, she's naked in the sense that she's not wearing any clothes, but she's mostly covered in bandages. And I put the Obama logo. Remember when he was running for re-election, it was forward. So I crossed out the D and it says for war. And, Facebook had to pull that because it's nudity. And it's like, no. You are Facebook, you are now complicit in covering up Obama's war crimes. And so and I got suspended for that for a month. That's a relatively minor thing. But I've also spoken to Facebook, at least one Facebook employee who confirmed to me that my posts are getting flagged unnaturally. And this is one of the things about Facebook, is that it is an open censorship platform. Kind of like anybody can censor anybody through flagging, especially if you're organized like government, if you have way too much time on your hands, like 1.3 million government personnel who have security clearances, then of course you can control the conversation. I think Twitter is a little bit more of a fair, open platform, but obviously, we've seen even recently with them, banning Milo Yiannopoulos for saying feminism is cancer. Now there's some other things that he's done I don't agree with, but the way that he was just cut off the platform, is an absurd kind of censorship. And I really don't trust any of these. Of course, Instagram. So the big three, sort of old school social media platforms that I'm on are Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And they're still, hugely empowering, game-changing platforms. I guess you could call YouTube social media, but YouTube's been worse because YouTube is supposed to pay you, right, as a content creator. And they say even now for mainstream content creators, it's about $3 per 1,000 views that they should be making. Well, I was making that back in 2013 before the shotgun arrest, where I was doing about 2 million views a month on YouTube, and I was making $6,000 from that. That was my primary source of income. And I was hiring people mostly. Of course, I'm not taking money for myself. Almost all that money went back into the business. And I had to lay people off because they suddenly cut my revenue by 2/3 without explanation. So it went from $6,000 to $2,000. And what I found out later, that it was part of their plan to allow advertisers to not be associated with controversial content. And of course, then YouTube gets to decide what is controversial content. And I've seen, like, this is why I don't care about YouTube anymore. It was bought by Google a few years ago, and since then it's been all downhill, and it's still like YouTube still represents a major leap forward for humanity, that anybody on earth with an internet connection could post a video and have it be available all over the world. I mean, that was amazing. That was revolutionary. And yet somehow Google buys it and they manage to screw it up. So that's why I'm really excited now about steamit.com and how there's, a more a truly blockchain-based and much more open source social networking, though. I think there's going to be an even greater leap to come as we have truly open source social networking that people can click over from Facebook and Twitter, and it just sort of, copies your whole account and works better, but without any of the censorship. So I think all that's coming. But yeah, I faced definitely more than my share, I suppose you could say, of social media censorship. But even with that, you have to look at this in historical perspective and go, their ability to stop the flow of information that challenges power is going away, because they can't say, well, these social media networks are bad for us, so we're just going to get rid of them entirely. I mean, even China, right? And China, I think, it represents, with the Great Firewall, the greatest example today of government being able to control the flow of information on the internet. So instead of allowing Facebook and Twitter, they have, I think it's called Weibo, they have their, government censored version of social media in China. But even there, it's sort of like cat's out of the bag, guys. Can't put it back in now. And this is the future where people have access to information, and when people have access to information, they can learn how to make government obsolete. They can learn that government is a racket, fundamentally. They can learn that most of what government is telling them, or at least the important stuff, is lies intended to, make you submit.
Yeah, Adam, one thing that's always been important for me in this show is I've always wanted to stay independent and not make any deals with the devil, not allow anybody to control the show or tell me what I can put on here. I think there's a tremendous power in staying independent and being able to do things on your own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even though I faced all the censorship, I had my start in independent media, just so people know my history. I've been a lifetime member of the Libertarian. I got to go back because I have to use the R word here. But I've been, I became a lifetime member of the Libertarian Party in 2004 when I got back from Iraq with the Marines, and it was the first time I could afford it. And then I was, longtime anti-war activist and Ron Paul supporter. And Ron Paul asked me to run for Congress as a Republican and said he would endorse me if I ran as a Republican. So I did. I ran for Congress in New Mexico in 2010. And I couldn't shut up when the race was over. So I got a radio show on AM 1550 KIVA, More Positive Talk Radio Albuquerque. And I got canceled after about 6 months because I wasn't selling my own ads. I was supposed to sell my own ads instead of, just letting the station do it. And then I got picked up as a television show, Adam versus the Man did, for RT America, Russia Today. And, of course, that's still, a centrally controlled media outlet, and it's the Russian government poking the American government in the eye, which I was more than happy to be a part of. So that's fine. But, of course, I got canceled after 4 months there for obvious political reasons. I was being openly critical of Putin. And I made a very careful effort to say, and I made a deal with them before I took the show that I would have absolute editorial control. And except for a couple of minor formatting things with the chyrons, they were like, when I interviewed Ron Paul, I wanted it to say future president of the United States underneath, and they wouldn't let me do that. But other than that, they did truly, I got to hand it to them there. They did honor the general term of respecting my editorial independence. And so I made a point of being, as critical of Putin as I would have been if I was on any other platform, or maybe even just a little bit more so, to make it clear that just because I was being funded by the Russian government in this context, that I wasn't going to let them off the hook. And I think after 4 months, they realized, or somebody higher up realized, wait a second, this guy's not just against the American government, he's against the idea of government. Well, we can't be promoting that message. So I got canceled after 4 months, and that's when I started going independent with a podcast and focusing on my YouTube channel. I was able to build that up to 70 million views before, kind of getting away from, focusing on YouTube. So, yeah, it's, I've always had that independence, but at the same time, we live in a world, at least for now, I mean, even with Steam, and I love Steam, and I'm, a huge fan. I think that's the next leap forward for human communications and social media. But, even Steam, is not fully decentralized and open source. I think we'll get to that point. I think in like maybe 10, 20 years it might take, It might be sooner, it might be a few years. I mean, we have the ideas, we have the capability. We've seen with Bitcoin, which I'm a huge fan of, and cryptocurrencies in general, with blockchain technology, that we can achieve so many things in a decentralized manner. And right now, it's really just a matter of creating that market demand for people to realize, I mean, through productions like yours, that these platforms are corrupt. And, while I've maintained that editorial independence, we have to do what's available, work with what's available to us. So you compare this to like 100 years ago, where if you were subversive, or even just 50 years ago, you just go 50 years ago to the anti-war movement. They didn't have the internet. They had to protest. They had to work to get on television and in newspapers to really get people's attention. And a lot of them got arrested without any notice whatsoever. And they had to pass out flyers and pamphlets. They had to go like while the government controls newspapers, and radio and television as those forms of mass communication, they had a much tighter stranglehold back then. So at least the establishment as a whole did. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to challenge the establishment, you had to go out and talk to people one at a time. You had to go and like mimeograph. We didn't have photocopiers back then. You had to print stuff. You had to write stuff by hand a lot of times. So you go back even further. You look at, and it's why we say Martin Luther King Jr. now, but the original Martin Luther, with the Protestant Reformation, it was because he had one piece of paper on the door of a church. And back then, that was what was required to get the word out. And now it's certainly much easier. I think this represents an amount of progress for humanity.
Yes, certainly. That's an excellent point you bring up, because if you go back and look at what was going on during like World War II, you can see how tightly public perception was controlled. Oh, these people are the enemy, the Nazis or the Japs, the this and that. And people really just totally drank the Kool-Aid, and they managed to get everybody, and of course the Germans were doing it too, but they managed to get everybody just worked up into this war frenzy, and it was all about production.
Yep.
And I think that this is all very interesting. But Adam, I did want to kind of ask you about something that I find to be incredibly interesting and also slightly hilarious. There's a video on YouTube, it's still up there, where you're confronting this guy that he looks like he's the size of Brock Lesnar, and he's getting right up in your face. And you just totally outsmart this guy. You totally just, you run circles around him.
Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, exactly. That was incredible. How did you pull that off?
Well, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because the title of that video is Would-Be Bully Gets Kokeshed, and Nonviolent Communication in Action. Now, we use the term kokeshed as like, told off or put in their place, but really I think of it as being confronted with irrefutable truths that challenge what you're doing and in this case, this guy had heard from someone else that I had said something bad about the military in my speech. It was in the basement of this bar. So he comes down to confront me and says, if you have something bad to say about the military, we need to step outside. And he's trying to fight me. And this guy was a monster. I mean, like I said, I'm not a small dude. I'm about, I'm 5'10", 200 pounds, pretty sturdy build. So, but this guy made me look tiny. Like he really made me look small. And if you just go, you can search the video. It's been reposted so many different places, and I'm really excited that it has been now years later, because my hits usually surprise me. But I'm really glad that you brought it up, because it's important to understand nonviolent communication. And now this is a metaphor. I always have to explain to libertarians. Yes. It's communication. Of course, it's nonviolent. But when we talk about a process for communicating with people in a deeper way to connect with them, to increase the amount of exchange of information, of value, of commerce, this is in the best interest of capitalism, right? And of course, capitalism is an economic system based on ownership of the means of production. And if you define that properly, the greatest means of production is the individual human mind. And if you don't own yourself, we don't have capitalism. It's not factories and widgets and dollars. No, it's about self-ownership and creating human happiness and harmony. That's what capitalism is really all about when you define those terms properly. So nonviolent communication is a process where it's sort of 4 steps. And the first one is observations. And sometimes this can be skipped, right, when there's no dispute in observations. But like, say you want to raise an issue. And by the way, I highly recommend that everybody study NVC. It will change your life entirely. All of your challenging relationships will be fundamentally altered. And I'm not an expert in this. And it's the kind of thing like, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you're in perfect health. Just because I'm an advocate of NVC and I'm a practitioner when I can doesn't mean that I'm perfect in it. I'm still susceptible to my own emotional failures in that sense. But the first step is observations. So if you wanted to raise a challenging issue with someone, you might say, hey, I've observed that this happened. And the first step is you want to make sure that your observations are kind of on the same page, right? And now the next step is to get into feelings, right? Now this can go either way, right? So like if in this case the bully's challenging me, so I know that he's the one who's got some negative feelings, right? So this is a process you could say as how do we address negative feelings in general? And in that sense, this is a very important, very direct way of getting at that. And when you're talking to someone in a challenging situation, you can almost never go wrong by turning attention to their feelings. This is about empathy, and connecting with another person. So when it's a guy in a bar who's trying to beat me up, I'm saying, you sound angry. Are you angry? And he goes, yeah, damn right, I'm angry. And it's like, okay, now we've established that. So then I can say, well, why are you angry? What? And so the next step, sorry, before I go to the next step, if it's something else, like say you're in a romantic relationship where something is challenging you and you're having uncomfortable feelings, you might go to your partner, your spouse, and say, hey, I've noticed this pattern in our communication. Are we on board here? This is my observation. Is my observation correct? And they might say, they might disagree and say, no, your observation is incorrect. You're just totally misunderstanding me. I have a different understanding of that word, or I'm just talking this way because I'm really hangry right now. I just need to eat. Can we just eat? And then it all goes away. So sometimes just stopping and making sure that your observations are on the same page can resolve the entire issue. But like, let's say you raise an issue with your spouse and they say, yeah, I have noticed this pattern of communications. You're correct. And then you can say, well, look, this is how it makes me feel. Oh, you have to be careful about this. And there are a lot of other understandings to execute this process properly. And one of the most important ones is to know that you and no one else is responsible, or you are responsible for your feelings. You can't say something made you feel that way. You can say, when that happened, I felt that way. But that's taking responsibility for your feelings. It's really important. So you're not projecting that on someone else. So you could say to your partner, look, these are my observations. We're on board. Okay, same thing. We see the same thing happening. Okay, so when just so you know now, my feelings when this happens are this, that, and the other negativity. When you say these things like this, I feel hurt. And it's very important to say, like, let's say disrespected, because disrespected isn't a feeling. Disrespected is an action. That's an accusation to the other person. So it's really important that you use precise language in this. But even if you don't have all the precise language, you can still apply this basic methodology, because then you get to needs, right? Why do you have this negative feeling? It's because in that situation, one of your needs isn't being met. So you might say that, my need, like, in this case, why is he angry? When I'm, this guy at the bar wants to fight me, like, so why are you angry? What need of yours is not being met? And maybe it's a need to feel respected. Maybe it's a need to feel honored and appreciated for his service. And so in that sense, what I was able to do in this video was deconstruct that and say, well, look, do you believe in freedom? Do you believe in the Constitution that you swore an oath to? Because everything we did, overseas was unconstitutional. It was illegal. So, shouldn't we be able to address that? And so I was able to bring that up. And so then the final step in the process is, just to finish the idea of needs, we have lots of needs, and if you look up nonviolent communication, there's sort of cheat cards that they have for this, for what are my, for different feelings, because in the language that we use, we are so conditioned to use what the originator of this, and I got to give him credit, of course, every time, Marshall Rosenberg, what he described as violent language. When we corral other people, when we accuse other people, when we back them into corners, as opposed to connecting with them, at the heart level with empathy. So anyway, the needs, there's a need for safety, a need for security, a need to feel respected, a need for personal expression, a need for food, water, clothing, sexual expression. All of these things are fundamental, legitimate human needs. So in that sense, when you can get down to I feel some negativity because these needs of mine aren't being met, then you can get to the final step, and that's requests. You say, well, to your partner, like, hey, I would request that you stop talking to me this way because it makes me feel bad and it's preventing me from getting my need met. And one of the cool things about this is that sometimes if you walk into to a store and say, I need this, get me this. Okay, they might get you what you need right away and get you out the door sooner. But if you go in there and say, hey, what I need is, because I have, instead of just going straight to a request, you say like let's just say you're, I know this is kind of a silly example, but let's say you're in a cold city, you showed up on a flight, you didn't bring any cold weather clothes, and you walk into the store, like you're in, and it's a total crazy blizzard, and all you're thinking is, I need a hat and gloves. I need a hat and gloves. You walk in there and say, I need a hat and gloves. Where's your hat and gloves? Give me a hat and gloves. And you buy it and you walk out of there and you're okay. But if you say, hey guys, I'm feeling really cold. My need for physical warmth isn't being met because I just screwed up. I was not adequately prepared for this trip. And, I need some warm weather clothing. They might say, oh, well, we have a parka, we have with a hood built in with who knows what other features. And you're going to be much better taken care of when other people understand your needs rather than your requests directly. And they might help you modify your requests to better meet your needs. And so you see right away how this is such a powerful methodology of communication. And in the case of this bully, I was able to talk him down and turn a guy, I could have argued with him. I could have debated with him. I could have accepted his challenge and gone outside and gotten beaten to the sidewalk.
Yeah, Adam, from what I can tell, just observing you and your body language and all of that, it looked to me like you were perfectly ready to go outside with this guy. It's just that you were trying to settle it down before it got to that point. But it seemed to me like you were perfectly willing to fight him.
Well, I think it's important when you embrace this methodology to also communicate from a place of authenticity. And in order to do that, you do have to conquer your fear to some degree. And in this case, I had people filming all around me. I had a bunch of people there. This guy was a drunk idiot. I'm really not worried. If he really were to try to jump on me and attack me there, I had this was after a speaking event. I had just given a speech. So all my fans were there, I would have been able to jump on this guy. And it might have gotten ugly, but, I really wasn't that afraid. And I don't think I was, primed, ready for a fight, but I was standing up straight. I was direct. I was able to, at the end of this conversation, shake hands with him. And he says, all right, then I have no problem with you. And I think that's really emblematic of a lot of human conflict, is that people just don't understand each other. They don't take the time to empathize. They don't take the time to understand other people's feelings and needs and realize that, we have this universality of the human experience. We all have, more or less, you can argue with this all you want, but functionally, we basically have the same kind of brains that live in a human body that needs, we all have the same basic needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, fulfillment, love, affection, expression. This is universal to human nature. And this is one of the greatest takeaways that I got from getting an undergraduate degree in psychology, which is that there is this universality of the human experience. And we are very much, products of the conditioning that we are subject to. Of course, the individual human will is capable of overcoming any of that conditioning with enough, deliberate willpower. But even that, where did that willpower come from? That's your biology. That's your inheritance as a human being. And the more we realize that we really are, one human family, the easier it is to resolve all of those conflicts. And so, when I come to someone like that, I try to keep that in mind. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching here, because I am not like some, living version of Jesus, mythological creature who can overcome all the worst parts of human nature. I'm just someone who has seen this particular, methodology, this approach, this insight that I want to share with the world so that we can all live better, freer lives.
And I think that this situation is really important because I wouldn't say that I target the youth, but I have this awareness that really the youth are the future. And sometimes I watch the news or I watch YouTube and I see these people like this group, the anarchists, and some of these young communist groups and stuff like that. And they're going out there, they're breaking bottles and they're throwing bricks and they're hurting each other. They're hurting people, and they don't seem to understand that the peaceful type of protesting is actually far more effective. They just don't seem to get it.
Yeah, and I'd love to have some opportunities, and maybe as I travel the country now, I'll find more where I'm able to talk to some of those people and say, look, I mean, can you imagine going up to someone in a black mask at a violent protest as the meeting goes? How are you feeling right now? I'm angry. Okay, well, why are you angry? And listen to them, give them that empathy, give them that platform, give them that space to get in touch with what their unmet needs really are. And their requests are never going to come out to, please let me break a bunch of windows because it's good for my anger. No, I want to, a lot of them are, at core motivated, essentially by the same things as we all are. And I should say that right now I'm in Acapulco, Mexico, in advance of the Anarchapulco conference. And one of the things I'm really excited about doing here is a workshop. I'm doing a half-day workshop on nonviolent communication, of course, especially oriented to anarchists, and by anarchists I mean libertarians. So it's really important, I think, for those of us who are expressing a message that challenges state power, that's based on emotional manipulation, that our method of communication is true to the message that we're communicating. Of course, yeah, we got to grab people's attention sometimes, but ultimately, we're going to be more effective when we're coming from this place of love and authenticity and being able to meet other people's needs. And I hope that in my presidential campaign, when I'm saying, look, let's dissolve the federal government in a peaceful, orderly manner. Let's make life better for everyone immediately. That I'm able to stay grounded in that. Of course, it's a whole different challenge in the political context, but I think as you're well aware, based on your understanding of my motivation and what I'm doing with this, that this is all the same reason I started protesting the war when I got out of the Marines in 2006. This is all connected with why I became a libertarian in the first place. Why I consider myself an activist. I see that this is the best thing that I can do to serve humanity, to provide value for other people. I want to. People say that this is selfless. Nope, not at all. I want to bend the world to my will. I want to see everybody embrace these ideas that are valuable and important to me, and that's what would bring me far more satisfaction than money or fame or I guess you could call it influence. So I guess I'll take that as a motivator. Yeah, I want to be influential in that sense, and I want to share these ideas that I see are so powerful, that challenge the existing rackets of violence and exploitation through government and really liberate humanity so we can evolve past this era of institutionalized violence, of statism, of centralized governments and power through violence.
And one thing that I just got to ask is, I'm sure you're aware, there's people that come on my show that are harassed by unknown parties. We call it gang stalking, and this is a little bit more in the conspiracy realm. But I got to ask, do you feel that perhaps, Adam, you are being specifically targeted because somebody out there knows that you're a smart guy, somebody out there knows the influence that you're having, that you're getting all these views, that you're talking circles around people in a bar? Somebody's going to notice that, and they're going to see you as a threat. Do you believe this could be starting to happen to you, that this might be evolving into almost a form of gang stalking?
Well, but before I answer that directly, I want to correct something a little bit. I wasn't talking circles around this guy. I mean, maybe when we got into the start, talking about the issues of war and foreign policy. But no, what I was doing with this guy, that was the powerful part, was not talking circles around him or being a better debater. It was being more empathetic and being more able to directly connect from that place of love and authenticity. And that's what diffused the anger and the desire for a fight and a confrontation. But in my case, I've seen a lot of these cases of gang stalking, and I've heard a lot about it. And it's an interesting term to use to describe what is. It's not really accurate. I don't like the term gang stalking because that suggests, I mean, yes, police are gangs. You know, the government is a gang. It's the biggest gang in the world, the most destructive and the most violent and the most territorial and the most exploitive. But and most people don't think of gangs that way. They don't think of stalking as this kind of harassment. And I've seen people experience different elements of this, but I think a better way of describing it would be sort of, you know, individually targeted systematic government harassment. And obviously that's not as catchy as gang stalking, so maybe that's not the term, but I think we need a term to describe government harassment of activists, you know, a little more precisely than gang stalking. So in terms of answering your question directly about my case, it's hard to say. You know, this latest arrest is certainly really fishy, but I think, you know, when I went to jail and I wrote an open letter to the sheriff of Wise County, I said, you messed with the wrong Marine. You know, like, I'm still, you know, you can take the Marine out of the Corps, but you can never get the sand from a rock out of his butt crack. And, you know, I still have that, you know, in some part of me, that warrior mentality. And I'm not someone who's going to be intimidated. You know, if anything, if you come at me, I'm going to use judo. I'm going to take that momentum. I'm going to use it to my advantage. Like I said, with this arrest, okay, I'm announcing for president on the, you know, the most dangerous to the establishment platform in American history. Well, yeah, come at me, bro. And when you're going to falsely arrest me for that, I'm going to take that momentum and I'm going to turn it into a ton of publicity. And I'm going to call attention to your violence and your criminality, and it's going to backfire like most government programs, and it's going to have a worse effect for you than it will on me. To get back to the start of this interview, man, 10 days in jail, no big deal. Small cost of doing business. I did 7 months in Fallujah for the government. Yeah, I can do 10 days in jail to stand up to their illegitimate power. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think I've experienced what most people describe as gang stalking and the kind of you know, personal surveillance and petty harassment, because I've successfully created a spotlight on myself through social media. And, you know, they could cut me off of any one platform and I'll still have plenty of others. You know, I've done, depending on how you want to count them, really like 5 national tours now, the last 3 true, you know, cities in almost every state in the continental U.S. type tours. So I have a huge network. I have a huge backing. If anything happens to me, there's going to be attention called to it. And I think they have a hard time coming after someone like me, because for a government, you know, bureaucrat or political hack or whoever it is to say, go after Kokesh, they have to say why. You know, and I'm so visible and I'm so upfront about what I'm doing. I'm so, you know, clear that it's about freedom and peace and love and harmony that they have a hard time framing me or setting me up like they did with Schaefer Cox, you know. And I love Schaefer, so I don't mean this as any criticism of him, but because what he did was involved, you know, had more direct involvement with citizens reclaiming, you know, physical violent power using firearms at the local level, you know, they were able to set him up with some of those charges, and he had a little less visibility, and a lot of what he did went down before we had the fully developed social media networks that we have today. So I think in a sense, you know, I have a little protection, I have a little immunity. I don't want to jinx myself right now saying this, because I know as this presidential campaign picks up speed, you know, it's going to be worse. But you know, I'm really hoping that, you know, if there's anybody listening to this right now who is a government employee who's been asked to do something unethical towards me, if you're eavesdropping on this, you know, that you really listen. So to anybody who's listening to me right now on behalf of government in some way, you know, I want you to know that you're part of the human family too. And I love you, and I want you to be free. I want you to have a peaceful life. I don't want you to have to work for government. I don't want you to have to do evil things in the name of government. And I think because that is such a core part of my message, that they really have a hard time, you know, ordering someone to assassinate me or, you know, to do the sort of gang stalking stuff. But, you know, of course, I wouldn't put it past them. I understand that, you know, they could take me out at any time. Although I think if they did, you know, it would be worse for them. I think if they shot me right now, if I were to die, you know, having done what I've done, having gotten the message out that I have, having written the book that I have, that, you know, it would be, you know, it would be worse for them. It would call more. It would, if anything, it would accelerate the demise of the state, of unjust, violent authority. So, you know, in that sense, I feel pretty comfortable, you know, living my life the way I'm going to live it, and you know, projecting love and peace and desire to get freedom to everyone openly.
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of these cases of people being harassed, really the goal of whoever these parties are is to wear a person down and really get in their head. And I think with your case,
yeah, they can't do that to me.
Yeah,
no way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm impervious to that kind of shit.
Yeah, a little bit harder because you have the military background. You've been in the shit, so to speak. So it's really hard to get in your head and wear you down. But I do understand that they actually somebody ransacked your home.
Oh, that was when they searched my vehicle, that it was turned inside out. You know, actually, when my RV was raided, it was a relatively mild search compared to what a lot of people go through, and also compared to when my home in Virginia was raided in 2013. There, they really ransacked it, turned shit inside out, broke open my safe, you know, broke a lot of stuff, and it was pretty disgusting. But no, I mean, the stuff that I've suffered, you know, as a result of standing up really is petty. I really don't want people to see me as a victim. You know, I understand, yes, I'm a victim in this circumstance. Yes, I was victimized here. Yes, I'm victimized there. But, you know, again, to turn it back to the racial issue, you know, a lot of black Americans who suffer under the war on drugs don't have the visibility, don't have the protection. They get railroaded. They get bullied into submission. They get threatened with you know, extra charges. They do, you know, way more time for the same crimes as white people. So in terms of what I've actually suffered as a victim of the police state, even in social media censorship, it's really relatively small compared to, you know, the true victims of government and what they've experienced.
And being that you do have somewhat of a connection to Russia, what do you think about all the, it looks like hate and propaganda to me against Russia? Is the Russian government really that bad? I know you've spoken out about Putin, but is he this monster that he's being portrayed as recently?
All governments are fundamentally evil, and so I'm not willing to give someone like Putin a pass, even if you see him doing things that might have generally positive effect or equalizing effect. One of the most important things to remember about Russia is that, you know, we've been taught to think of it as the equal superpower to the United States, but depending on how you measure it, their economy is 1/30th to a 40th the size of the American economy. If anything, it'd be much more accurate to describe Russia as a satellite of the American empire than some equal competing superpower. And all of this talk about collusion with Russia really misses the point, because the greatest foreign power in terms of corrupting American foreign policy is not Russia, it's Israel. And there's no talk about, hey, what's the Israel collusion? And it's like, well, Israel so controls both parties and both candidates. They didn't care if it was Trump or Clinton. Either way, they're going to get, you know, what is it, $40 billion a year in military aid and all the other, you know, benefits that they get behind the scenes through the American military industrial complex. So no, the idea of, and I do believe, and it's funny because George W. came out recently and said, yes, of course Russia was meddling. Yeah, and this is like, hello, the American government has been meddling in the affairs of countries all over the world for pretty much its entire history. So it is really a silly accusation lacking historical context to say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Now the Russians, you know, or they meddled in the American election. Yeah, if there was collusion with one campaign or another, you might say that crossed another line, but it's such a small incremental line, you know, past that it really doesn't matter when the greatest collusion and corruption from foreign powers in the United States is clearly from Israel, not from Russia.
And how do you feel about this recent major move by our president to move the embassy to Jerusalem?
Well, I try to keep my feelings, you know, out of this kind of stuff so I can look at it objectively. And when I look at it objectively, you know, I'm just thinking, well, why do the American people allow ourselves to be represented in other countries by our government at all, instead of by people, you know, and companies and organizations who are peaceful? And this idea that Donald Trump, as the president, can just sign a piece of paper and now a foreign government has a different capital. I mean, I honestly, I don't understand it, and I don't really care to. It's not a subject that I've like gotten into in any kind of great depth, because it's all based on so many dangerous and absurd false premises that, I'd rather address those false premises. You as a free, beautiful, independent human being own yourself. And this is the foundation of ethics. This is why it's wrong to hurt you or violate your self-ownership physically, to take your stuff. You could sum up libertarianism as don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And the only justified use of force is in self-defense. And when people all over the world realize this, and I think this is part of what we see happening with the internet, with the paradigm shift, as people are becoming more empowered, that more and more people are understanding that. And that's what I want people to embrace. But like I said originally about this campaign, if I may sidebar for just a second here, I used to in my speeches to sort of make fun of libertarians, or not make fun, but to challenge them intellectually. I would say, how many of you designed the cut of the shirt that you're wearing right now? And of course, always there's one smartass in the back who raises his hand and says, I'm a fashion designer. But no, usually it's nobody, right? You ask an audience that, it's nobody. And so I say, hey, look, if I was given a speech on fashion and design, then I could ridicule you all and say that you're a bunch of sheep, you're a bunch of followers. None of you even designed your own clothes that you're wearing today, right? And I think the point that most people are able to really easily get out of that is that that we do have it incumbent upon ourselves, as those of us who care, who see these issues, to take leadership, as opposed to demanding that other people understand what we understand, that we enlist ourselves in service to humanity to make their lives better. And that's why localization is the way forward. Most human beings don't have to understand philosophy. They don't have to study economics to realize that the closer government is to the community, to the individual, the better off we're all going to be, the less corrupt it's going to be, the more free, the more safe, the more prosperous we're all going to be. And while there is this deeper philosophical paradigm shift happening as well, I think most importantly is this sort of immediate practical paradigm shift that I'm hoping to lead, to show leadership in and say, look, this is how we move humanity forward. We're going to decentralize power. We're going to localize governments from the top down, take them apart, and restore power to our communities away from this trend of centralization. And I think that everything I've seen just says this is the future for humanity.
And on that note, do you feel at some point that these private militias that, sometimes they have some storehouses of firearms and rifles and things like that, do you think it's possible that the government might try labeling these people as terrorists and targeting them?
Oh, of course. It's already happening. I mean, even when I was in Iraq, we imposed martial law. And it's really kind of ironic that under, a Republican, George W. Bush, we imposed gun control on a country in chaos where we would say, no, people should be able to defend themselves. And anytime we, kicked down a door and raided a home and found weapons, and this wasn't something I was doing, I was in civil affairs. But, every time that happened, it was, well, you can't have guns. If you have guns, you must be a terrorist. And it's really pretty sick and sad.
And I do find that you've been talking quite a bit about freedom, and freedom is something that's very important to me. In fact, I've made a lot of choices in my life to maintain a sense of freedom, like not having children, for example. And I actually feel like it kind of makes people jealous in some way. It seems like when a person views another person with more freedoms than them, it kind of bothers them a little bit. They recognize that person has something that they do not. Do you think there's something to that? Like, maybe the ultimate truth is that if you have power, really all you get is more responsibility, but there's something about freedom that is really so much better. Perhaps the key to happiness really is freedom.
Well, yeah, your individual will respect. There's definitely a lot to what you just said. I wouldn't dispute the dynamics that you point out. Although I want the freedom to have kids without government interference. I want the freedom to have kids without thinking that CPS is going to come and steal them in the middle of the night or raid my home because I'm homeschooling them or unschooling them or, letting them direct their own education, as is the natural state for a child's healthy mind. I want to have the freedom. You say freedom and responsibility, and now this is kind of opening up a whole other philosophical conversation.
Whoops.
That I don't really No, it's fine. But I don't really try to get into that because to me, I want you my ultimate goal is for you to be able to determine those parameters in your own life without any kind of external interference. If you want to take on a responsibility, if you want to take on a certain power, and when you say power, obviously, there are a lot of different ways of defining that. And we've been talking about political power mostly, which is unjust power based on violence, based on central control, based on lies and propaganda. But when you talk about like legitimate power, like that you have power in your community or in the economy because you're providing value to other people or you've taken on some responsibility and made yourself dependable and accountable, then I want you to be able to determine those parameters in your life for yourself. Now, when you say that other people look at you and say, Daniel, you've got this freedom that I don't have, I think that's a great way to inspire people by living by example and challenging them, because the reason that we have the problems that we have with government, as you pointed out earlier, talking about the Stanford Prison experiment and the Milgram obedience studies, is that there is this element of human nature that, is inclined to submit. And when you show people that they don't have to and they live better being free and asserting their independence and their free will, yeah, we're all going to be a lot happier.
And Adam, this is definitely one of the last things I wanted to ask you, and I believe I probably asked you this before, but a lot of people in the conspiracy world, like Alex Jones has said this a lot of times, but a lot of this stuff, includes supernatural elements, aliens, and things like that, Illuminati. Many feel that it's actually some form of COINTELPRO, disinformation, misinformation, to really distract everybody from these ground floor level obvious problems and lies that are right in our face. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought for a long time that Alex Jones was controlled opposition because he got his start in terrestrial radio. If you're the people behind 9/11, who do you want representing the 9/11 truth cause, right? It's going to come out anyway, so why not put the most, sensationalist, least credible person out in front of that you can? I think the fact that he ended up getting so strongly behind Donald Trump really just proves that, he's not consistent in his own, living up to his own alleged espoused principles. And yeah, it's a distraction issue. Like I'm really not big on studying conspiracies unless you count government, because it is the biggest conspiracy to take advantage of all of us. So, if you want to say that looking at the moon landing or, the Gulf of Tonkin, I think it's important to study history, but there's enough that we know in history that clearly shows that government itself is a giant conspiracy. That well, the analogy I like to use, and sometimes I use I'll just use the family-friendly, non-prison version of this analogy. So if you want to use your imagination and figure that one out when I'm done, feel free. But if you have a knife in your back, if you're getting stabbed in the back, are you supposed to go, gee, I wonder what kind of knife that is? That's an interesting pommel and hilt, and look at the jeweled handle. Wow, that's really fascinating. I wonder where this knife came from. I wonder who made it. Or are you going to say, no, get the knife out of my back now and focus on that? And so if you're focused on studying the knife instead of helping us get it out of our backs, I think that really should say something about your true motivation. And I think a lot of people, if you just present that to them, they go, oh, crap. Yeah, you're right. Let's get the knife out.
Yeah, very good point. And I do know that you're on a normal phone, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know we agreed to an hour, but I do want to go ahead and just open things up a little bit for you. I like to do this each time, but Adam, if you'd like to just hop up on that soapbox one more time and just say whatever you would like to say to my audience out there, and please follow that up with anything at all that you would like to plug, anything that you feel needs to be relevant, go ahead.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate that. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a great conversation. I hope your listeners appreciate and enjoy it as much as I have. And I really appreciate your perspective and how you've guided this. So let me just say that I hope that if people really consider what I've said, that they would come to the same conclusion that I have, that the greatest source of injustice in the world today is the United States federal government. And it exists with the consent of the American people. And what I'm doing with my presidential campaign is turning the American presidential election into a referendum on whether or not the federal government should be allowed to exist at all. We are going to withdraw our consent. For the first time ever, the American people are going to have a real vote, not over what flavor, color, of master overlord they're going to have, but whether we should have one at all. And I hope you'll join me in this. I'm running for the Libertarian Party nomination for president because I think it's the most efficient platform to get this message in front of the American people. We're so far ahead of schedule with this campaign right now that I'm very confident what we're going to be able to do at the 2018 Libertarian Party National Convention is going to fundamentally change the American political conversation entirely, so that this idea will be part of the conversation. My goal is not to make myself the presumptive nominee of the Libertarian Party, although we do hope to achieve that. It is not to be the presumed, last president of the United States, although we hope to achieve that as well. More fundamentally than that, what we're able to do by getting this message out now, and again, this is not an educational campaign. We are running to win, and we are ready to win. We have what it takes to organize this huge administrative effort of dissolving the greatest criminal organization in the world. But what I want more fundamentally than any of that is for it to be presumed that this is the way forward for humanity, and that by 2020, the American people are not going, should we have Donald Trump or Elizabeth Warren or The Rock or Oprah as president, or maybe Adam, with his plan to dissolve the federal government. I want the presumption to be that this is what the American people are doing. We are finally having the next American Revolution, the final American Revolution, living up to the promise of our founding, the ideals of our founders, and that that we're not asking the question, should we have a federal government or not? We're asking, who's got the best plan to dissolve the federal government? And I hope to have a lot of competition in that regard. I hope there are more people coming in with different ideas and different plans on how to localize and how to decentralize power. And once this idea gets out there, once enough Americans, enough human beings all over the world realize that the way forward is decentralization of power, getting government back down to the community level, then I will have really achieved my goal. And if you see what we have when we get government down to the states, and then eventually we get it down to the counties, I think there you're going to see the actual dissolution of government itself, or rather a transition of those functions to voluntary institutions, things that we would not even call government at that point. And you can imagine when we get to that point, we're done. As libertarians, that's it. We can retire. It doesn't matter if you have a socialist county or a communist county or a conservative county or a liberal, whatever. If I can have a county where my community gets to set its own rules, where I can opt out on my own property, where everything is peaceful and voluntary, then we're done. And I think that's, how we can respect the right of self-determination of our fellow human beings to organize how they want in their communities. That's what's so essential about this message, is that it's uniting people left, right, and center against the common enemy that is big centralized government. We are separating ethics from aesthetics, right? The aesthetics of, I want my community to look this way, I want it to be organized this way with these values, whatever, with ethics of, that's fine, but you can't use force and violence against peaceful people to achieve those goals. They have to be achieved voluntarily. And so I hope that people would join us in this effort. Right now, we know that the Libertarian Party leadership is very corrupt. We know that people like Bill Weld have come in and tried to steal this platform, these washed-up Republicans. We know that he's my main competition right now for 2020, although we seem to have done a great job of putting him in his place pretty early here. And what I'm doing is organizing people all over the country to go to their state conventions and to become delegates to the national convention. It's very easy. We want to make it as easy as possible for you. We're going to help you out with the logistics. We have a great campaign team making it possible for people to do this. And we want to make it so that it's as inexpensive as possible. We're going to be organizing ride shares and Airbnb homes around the convention so that people can do this without putting a lot of money into it. And what I'm doing in 2018, aside from cleaning up the leadership of the Libertarian Party, is that we want to make localization part of the platform and put out a unity statement to the American people that says, if you want government localized, then we can all come together as the Libertarian Party and we can make this happen. So if you want to join me in this, please, you can go to kokeshforpresident.com. And Daniel, I assume you're organized. You'll include the links. But just
Absolutely.
in case, the easiest way to find me, like I said, is my main website, thefreedomline.com. You can get my book for free there. You can find kokeshforpresident.com. You can find all my social media stuff, and it is thefreedomline.com.
Excellent. Adam, so good talking to you. I had a great time as well. We really got into it, and I definitely would love to talk to you again as we approach the campaign and your momentum keeps growing. It's really good to see you attaining this popularity, almost like a Ron Paul.
Absolutely, no, and I appreciate it. I hope you could have me on again maybe sometime in May or June as we get closer to the national convention.
That sounds like a great plan to me. All right, Adam, I will talk to you then, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, brother. Peace and love to you.
Bye. All right, and there you have it. That was Adam Kokesh. Very cool having him on. It's so funny because when he came on the first time, we were just way too focused on this idea that he might be Jonathan Brandis with a little surgery and some steroids. But now we know that that's a bunch of BS. That was probably put out there by one of these COINTELPRO people, these disinformation, misinformation types. That's just my theory. I'm sure Adam wouldn't agree with it. It's probably just some jokers that put it out there. But I do appreciate being able to have him on and have a much more serious, in-depth conversation this time and really get into the ideas of freedom and his philosophies and things like that. So big thank you to Adam Kokesh and his campaign team for helping arrange this interview today. And I do want to come back after the break. I have so much relevant news to talk about, so many things going on in the world, some letters from fans and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and play a little music, and I will talk to you guys after the break. Raising consciousness and awakening mankind. This is End of Days Radio. And welcome back to the End of Days. This is your host, Daniel, broadcasting to you all the way from the shimmering Emerald City right here in Western Washington. Yes, it is I, Daniel, the all-American Cocker Spaniel, and I'm ready to completely blow your mind right now. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, let's do it. So, great interview, first of all. Great interview. Had a great time talking to Adam Kokesh. Very smart guy, and I highly recommend you go check his stuff out, whether that's on YouTube, a lot of his old stuff is on there, or some of the newer forms of social media, which I am very excited to hear about because I'm probably going to have to get in on that. YouTube is fine. This show goes up on YouTube like a lot of podcasts do, but the idea of supporting a open source platform sounds very appealing, and to do that in addition to the YouTube sounds like a great idea to me. So I'm going to look into that and see if I can incorporate something like that into the broadcasting platform here, whatever you want to call it. Some dude in his garage jerking off in between being an asshole on the mic, right? No, I don't do that. I'm just kidding. Calm down, people. All of you rampant militant feminists out there that hate when I make fun of hairy armpit hippie chicks and things of that nature. You people that leave those YouTube comments calling me immature. Yeah, hey, I mean, if anybody wants to call me immature, that does not hurt my feelings. I know, trust me, I know more than anybody. And part of that is, once again, personal choice. I made a choice in my life to, not have children. And to say that it's a choice, it almost makes it seem like I hate kids or I don't want to have kids or something like that, or I'm selfish. That could be like a turnoff, right? But it's really not even like that. It's more of a case of just me being a shy person most of my life and not having those opportunities that most guys have to fuck up their lives, and then getting older and looking back and saying, hey, maybe it's good that I was a little bit of a nerd. Maybe it was good that I was a little bit of a dork, because now I have all this freedom now, and I've gotten over a lot of those anxieties and insecurities that I had when I was younger. So I've got my freedom, and I don't have those attachments. I'm able to do a show like this with my free time, or I'm able to play guitar, or I'm able to, go to some martial arts classes and things like that. It's nice having that freedom. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have kids or anything like that. That's a personal choice. You should do whatever you want to do. But I'm just saying there's something to be said for, being independent and not attached. There's something to be said for that, and to have that personal power and that personal freedom. It's not that I dislike children or anything like that. I love kids. It's just that looking at how much they cost, that's one thing, especially when you live in Washington State where everything's super expensive. And just thinking about diapers and spitting up food and throwing up and stuff like that, it's just not very motivating. Plus, by the time you get to my age, I think that a lot of people that plan to have kids have had them already, and like the way to do that would be to date someone much longer. Did I say much longer? It's to date somebody much longer than me, hopefully like 7 foot. No, I'm just kidding. To date somebody much younger than me that's really in that time of her life, and to impregnate her, and then kind of go from there. But ironically, I tend to like women that are maybe 2 or 3 years older than me, because I connect with them on more of an intellectual level. So I tend to go more that way. So if I don't wind up with children, I'm probably going to be okay with that. I know that the earth is very overpopulated. I know that a lot of kids have problems because they come from broken homes. I came from a broken home and had problems. Still do. So I'd like to avoid all that. I think that marriage is kind of going out of style too. It's something that existed in the past to make sure that women were taken care of. And now I think that women make just as much money as men, and for a woman to marry a guy and make just as much money as him, and then to get a divorce, it's like, at what point are you, like, why do you need that? Why not just live together and jump the broom and have like a spiritual marriage or something like that, right? Why get financially attached when you don't even need to? Men and women can take care of themselves now. That's not something that I created. That's something that the feminists created, and the Illuminati people and the New Age people and all of them, right? Because that's what we believe here on the end of days. So if they're going to shape society like this, then don't complain to me just because I'm going to make the smartest moves while living and existing in this society. That I'm going to just be like, okay, maybe at the most we might live together, but have our own separate incomes, and when it's over, it's over. Dry your eyes, mate. You guys that are listening to the live stream, you know what I'm doing. I'm singing the song that I was playing during the break. The song by famous British rapper The Streets. I believe the song's called Dry Your Eyes. You guys know who The Streets is, right? He's like the British Eminem, sort of. I doubt very many of you even know who this guy is, but he's a rapper, and I really like his music. I just go by whether I like it or not. I don't care what anybody else thinks. If I listen to something, I like it or I don't. I don't care if it's Miley Cyrus or it's some super obscure, awesome metal band or whatever. If it's good, it's good. I think The Streets is really talented. That's my opinion. That's why I was playing him during the break. But my point being that when it's over, it's over. There's no reason to have to go through a messy divorce or have to worry about changing your name back to your maiden name or even doing any of that. Instead of being two halves of a whole, I think it really is much more mature to look at it more like you're two independent, complete people that are coming together and experiencing a relationship together, as opposed to being like, oh, you're my other half, or we're tied together at the hip, or we're soulmates, our souls are intertwined. And then you know what happens when you start thinking like that? When you do break up with the person, you feel like your soul has been ripped in half because that's what you believed, right? And it's not to say that you won't still be sad, but remember, beliefs are everything. And if you're going to believe somebody's your soulmate and they're not, then you got some issues. You got personal issues, and you're going to need some tissues. Okay, so what the hell even just happened right there? The thing I was just talking about was not in my notes. I just kind of went off. But I believe it's time to circle back and get back to my notes here, because that's the way I structured the show, and I shouldn't go off on these wild tangents. And remember, if you want to call in to End of Days Radio any point, call in at 209-348-9810, or just add Ninja Shoes 777 on Skype. I know our call-ins and live listeners have kind of dropped off a bit because, with me starting a new career, I've had to do the show at a different time. It's no longer every Saturday night at such and such time. Now it's more like anytime. The show really happens at any time, so it's hard for everybody to kind of congregate in the same way that we used to. And I do apologize for that, and I know that a lot of you guys out there really love that, and it's not me destroying that because I don't like it or anything like that. It's more just me changing the show and adapting it so that I can get more done, so that I can take care of myself and pay my bills and still do this show and do it at least once a week. Because if I can't be independent and I can't record the show and release it whenever I want and have it more of a podcast, then I can't just sit down and record it at any time. So that's part of the reason why we do it this way. Is it as good or as efficient? Probably not. But is the show still evolving and getting better anyways? Yes, of course. And if you are able to listen to the live show, if you pay attention to the schedule at endofdaysradio.com and you're able to join us live or call in live, I absolutely love that, and I will always have a live show. I will promise you that. The show will always be live. I love being live. It's just that focusing on the podcast form is important too, because I do know all of you guys can't always listen live, and you got to listen to it in bits when you can. And really, that's the way that the show is intended to be listened to. Whatever you want. You could be painting your little Warhammer figurines, or you could be mowing your lawn, or you could be picking the crap out of your teeth, or you could be taking a dump, or whatever you're doing. You can listen to this show at the same time. Video games. If you're a gamer and you like to play video games, if you play competitively and you play 24/7, we'll have this show playing in the background. And you can listen to our live stream at endofdaysradio.com. When I'm not broadcasting live, that stream is actually running the entire history of the show, all the past episodes. So that's a way that you can actually catch up on End of Days Radio and what it is, and hear all of those old episodes while you're doing something completely different. That's actually how I got into Coast to Coast. I would play World of Warcraft. And I would have old Art Bell episodes playing in the background. I learned a lot from that, and it really helped me kind of set the stage for what's going on now. And if I could take that time back, I probably would have never played that damn addicting game. Luckily, it gets old. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble, because that game is just insanely addicting at first, but as time goes on, you're just like, I want to try some PS4 games, or you know what I mean? You go back to the PS4, the consoles, and you go back and forth. I know I'm talking way too much and way too fast. That goes with drinking coffee when I do this show, which I probably shouldn't do, but I'm going to switch topics again. So I've got all these video games sitting on my shelf that I pretty much never get to. And some of them are halfway beaten. Some of them I barely started. And some of them I'm at the very end, but I didn't beat it because I was savoring it. And then I ended up never going back, and they're just sitting there. then I buy new games and I play those instead. Partially because I do love gaming, but at the same time, I'm a full-grown adult and I have to work, and this podcast comes first before other things. And when I play the guitar, I'm kind of doing it in between, and I do want to get back in the gym, but I only have so much time. But it's important for us to have some kind of outlet, like. Video games are one type of outlet that I really like because you can play them really anytime to kind of relax and get your mind off things. But I think it's important to have like a social outlet too. And a lot of people that listen to this show are loners, and I get that because there has to be some way where you felt like you were apart from society, or you were apart from things, right? Because what am I trying to say? Because you had to almost feel like an outsider at some point to really want to engage these crazy fringe topics, right? Like at some point you must have been looking for some kind of escape. But really, no matter which way you splice it, it's never good to be alone. There's strength in numbers, and maybe it's just that you need to find more people like you, or you need to grow a little bit to the point where you can accept other people into your life or into your heart. But it's good to have some kind of outside activity. Like with me, it became the martial arts classes. Like that became a way that I could interact and engage people and have a social life outside of the show and outside of work. And I really think that that's something that is important because, I mean, some of us have a few friends from high school, and, if you're a really super great person, you probably have a ton of friends from back then, and you've been able to maintain those friendships and everything. But most people, they have like one or two friends from back then that they hardly talk to, or nobody at all. So as you grow, I mean, you still gotta, since you're not going to school anymore, you gotta have some kind of social outlet, besides the people you work with, who you're basically paid to put up with, right? And that could be anybody. Sometimes you can make great friendships that way. But my point is that you gotta have something, whether that's martial arts classes, whether that's dancing, whether that's some sort of art group, or a book group, or Star Trek club, or some kind of weird stuffed animal fetish shit thing. Then go for it. I mean, whatever it is, like whatever you feel passionate about and what fuels you, find other people that are interested and like-minded. And maybe it's activism. Maybe for you it's activism. And I've tried to get a few of you guys to like join up with me and try to like go raid some underground bases or something like that. Not to say we'd actually get that close, but I understand that it's like, we have to go back to our normal lives in the morning, and we can't be putting ourselves at risk. I get that. I have to do that. For me to keep doing this show, I have to not do things that are that risky. And it's not to say that I never do things that are risky, but I really have to be able to, I have responsibilities and things I have to take care of. So my way of connecting with people and my form of activism is to do this show. And when you look at what's actually out there, there's not really that many people doing it. And the reason that is even though you have millions and billions of people in this world, these podcasts, they take a lot of work, and you'll see a lot of them pop up and kind of fizzle out. And hey, we've been here for, we started in 2012, 6 fucking years. This show, End of Days Radio, and of course Michael's spin-off show, and we've both been doing this for a very long time. So there's a lot of experience under my belt, and I'm kind of proud of the fact that I've been able to keep doing this where other people haven't. Not to say that I'm better than them or anything like that, but it's just me patting myself on the back and being like, oh yeah, way to go, buddy. You've stayed consistent. You've kept doing the show. There's an audience that actually follows you. That's kind of nice. Whereas, unless you are a celebrity, unless you have that inbuilt following and have that financial motivation, a lot of people, they just don't stick with this. Many of the people that are still doing it are stand-up comics, ex-reality show people, pro wrestlers, MMA fighters, people like that. But there's something to be said for the grassroots normal individual who is just doing it because they want to do it. You might have, let's say you have 10,000 people listening to you. And to be honest with you guys, 10,000 isn't going to earn you very much money in ad revenue or donations or anything like that. It's just the truth. If you really, if you actually want to make a living doing something like this, the truth is you need hundreds of thousands. That's just me being honest with you guys out there. And I have so much respect for you people out there that have those, audiences of thousands, and you're still doing it, because I know you're not making anything. You're probably just meeting your costs or not even. And I have so much respect for you guys, because you are pushing podcasting forward. This is a great medium, and the last thing we want is for this to fizzle out because there's not enough monetary gain from it. And that's part of the reason why I understand that, and I'm aware of that. And that's why I'm into helping people get started with this, because I know how hard it is. And believe me, I'm not worried about the competition, because once again, I know how hard it is. And for everybody that's out there keeping the candle lit, I thank you guys. And I will do everything in my power to help you keep going, whether that's having you on the show here, or just talking to you and keeping you motivated, or giving you some kind of free plug or whatever. I'm happy to do stuff like that, because we are all on the same side. And if your interest is really waking people up and it's really making the world a better place, then you're on the same team as I am. And I can put up with things about you I don't like. I just paused there to kind of just let that sit in. Okay, let's move on. Let's get back to the notes. I'm doing it again. The coffee, it's melting my brain. I'm getting all baby. I should have another sip, actually. Oh, God, that's good. There's not much sugar or cream in there either. Maybe, a tablespoon of creamer? I really love that natural coffee taste. I know what you're thinking. Oh, of course he likes coffee. He's from Seattle. Starbucks. No, it's just that a warm cup of Joe is excellent on a cold day. That's all it is. But there is a lot to talk about, so let's get off of this unholy rant of mine. Let's get back to the show. As many of you know, the winner of this year's Super Bowl is the Philadelphia Eagles. Yay for them. Yay for them. As you know, it wasn't long ago that the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and they were actually in the Super Bowl the next year. But it's good to see another team doing well. It's good to see them get a championship under their belts. That's amazing. And I know I'm totally late to the party on this stuff, but this is the first broadcast since the Super Bowl has happened, so I'm going to talk about it on this episode. First of all, I love the fact that the fans in Philadelphia are passionate. I love that. I love that they care. I love that they keep the team going. They keep that momentum going. Without the fans, the Eagles would not have been in the Super Bowl. That's the first thing. And I'm not talking sports. I'm not going to get into the actual game or anything like that. I know that a lot of you guys aren't sports fans and you don't tune into this show to listen to sports, but I know everybody watches the Super Bowl, so I think this is okay. But I just can't help but comment on the rioting going on in Philadelphia, and specifically one particular incident that everybody was talking about since it happened, and people are still talking about it, is the individual who took it upon himself to eat horse poop in celebration. He was out there on the streets with the people rioting, and he wound up with a big crowd around him that were chanting, "Eat it, eat it, eat it," or they're chanting something. They were goading him into doing this, and he takes both his hands and he scoops up this big pile of fresh horse shit, and he starts shoving it in his mouth, and oh God. You know what? I'm sorry. I just became aware of the I became aware of the picture I was painting, and I don't want to make you guys puke. But he takes this big handful of fresh green and brown horse manure and just stuffs it into his mouth and starts like chewing on and sucking on and spitting it out, and everybody's like, ah, and they're filming it from multiple angles. This guy actually became nationally, perhaps even world famous for eating a huge handful of horse excrement, of horse poop. And you got to imagine that for it to be there and to look that fresh, and for there to be people paying attention to it, that it must have just came out of the horse's bottom, right? Its behind. It must have just happened. Like, it must have just dropped. And I do recall actually reading something about that too. Like, the horse just pooped, and this guy, and he's got this, his clothes look dingy, like they're from like 5 to 7 years ago. Like, his gear even looks a little aged, a little worn. It seems to have a layer of soot on it. And the guy, he's a little overweight, really ugly guy. I mean, I'm not somebody that goes around thinking about people's looks or anything, but just right away you see him, you're like, wow, that's not the best looking individual I've seen. And then he's got this like big old gonzo nose, and he's just whitewashed, and he's got these dark circles under his eyes, and this like red that's on top of his eyelids, underneath the eyes. Like, you can tell this guy's probably got some problems. He's got a very worn down sort of look. And he's got his eyes just, they almost have this energy about them, like this dark sort of vibe. And you imagine a guy would have to have something going on with him, some kind of depression or self-hatred, wanting to hurt yourself, and it's a masochistic, humiliating yourself in public thing. And I gotta hand it to him. He got the whole world talking about him, laughing. It was funny, kind of. I mean, it was at least like, hey, look at this, right? It went viral. And I would love to have that guy on the show. I want the Philly shit eater on the show, because that is some of the most paranormal shit I've ever seen. That's the most paranormal event that I've ever witnessed. Forget the reptilians, forget the ghosts, forget the goblins. I want to talk to the Philly shit eater right now. But at the same time, you got to imagine that if he was talking to the press, I'm sure TMZ would have already picked that up. It'd be a long time before it got to me. But I'm still going to put that out there. If anybody knows the Philadelphia poop eater, or I'm sorry, a horse poop eater, because it's not like he was eating human poop. That would almost be slightly more normal. He was actually eating horse manure. Scooping it up in his ass. Do you think he must have done that when he was a kid? Like, he was the kid that would eat slugs and eat chalk. And one day he's like, hey, I'm going to do that thing I did when I was a kid. I'm going to do it at the Super Bowl. That's how I got attention back then, right? Oh, Lord. And you know what else is funny about that is here in Seattle, our team won the Super Bowl. And guess what happened? There was a peaceful parade. Hundreds of thousands of people showed up. Local celebrities, the Rick Steves, the Misha Tates, the Macklemores, they were all there. Nobody was rioting. Nobody was breaking stuff. It was just happy. It was peaceful. But, no offense to you people out there in the city of brotherly love or brotherly ungodliness. But look at what our city did compared to what your city did. Right? Look at how much more civilized people are here in Seattle. And how we kept it all about the team instead of breaking stuff and all that. And I know there's a difference in, difference in social class there, but I don't care. Don't act that way. I don't care if you're rich or you're poor. Quit making excuses. Don't act that way. Period. Don't live in the moment that much. Hey, don't get me wrong. I know that you people out there love your sports, but I think most of you have fun with it and you don't punch people in the face when your team loses, or especially when your team wins. I know that happened before in was it Los Angeles when the Lakers won? There were fires and riots and stuff like that. Yay, we won! Let's break everything. But that's what I'm talking about, how these young people nowadays, that's fun to them, that's cool. And I can't help but think that these young folk, they know something's wrong. They know something's wrong with the world, but whereas you and I... Oh, someone's calling. Wow. Hello.
Hey, Daniel, what's going on?
Hey, is this Al?
Yeah, I got a new phone.
Oh my God, I've never heard you so clearly. I almost didn't recognize you at first.
Exactly. That's why I was checking in with you. So, hey, now I can talk to you.
No, this is excellent. So, where should we start? Did you have something that you wanted to talk about, or did you want to give me some input on the interview you just heard, or perhaps what I was talking about?
No, I was just checking in. Usually, before when I called in, I couldn't hardly hear everything. I was hearing every other word you were saying, so I couldn't really carry on a conversation very well. So I was making you repeat everything you said. And so I was just checking in, letting you know I got me a new phone so I can be heard and I can hear you.
Did you watch that Super Bowl?
No, I don't watch sports.
That's probably a good thing.
What's an Illuminati distraction to keep you distracted from seeing what's really going on?
Interesting. I've heard that there's something about the team names too, like somehow that keeps you hypnotized.
I don't know about all that. I just know they use it to keep people distracted. As long as they're thinking about their favorite sports team, they're not thinking about real important stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, and it really makes you care, and it draws you in, and those NFL games get some seriously high viewing numbers.
Check.
Oh, Al, you're breaking up really bad, buddy.
Already? Oh, they must be trying to keep me from talking to you.
Yeah, there have been issues with this show. There's been times when the show was completely shut down by freak storms or because the internet was simply just turned off.
Yeah, I remember that night you were broadcasting, all of a sudden your internet went off.
Yeah, and everything else was on, and the internet was working fine for months and months, 24/7, never had an issue. Then suddenly, right when I'm in the middle of talking about some serious shit, kaplooey.
Yeah, it was just like yesterday. I went to pay my phone bill for my other phone. It got shut off at midnight the night before because it was due on the 7th. Scattered. So I went to go pay it, and they wouldn't take my payment.
They wouldn't take your payment?
Yeah, I had Walmart's friends and family deal, and they sold their phone thing back to whoever they got it from. And I went down there to pay my phone bill, and their computer system wouldn't let them take my payment. So I just said, screw that, went and got this one set up.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's like the phone company didn't want my money. I didn't get that.
Al, did you see that? Did you see that stuff in the news about Donald Trump moving the embassy to Jerusalem?
Oh yeah.
Is that a sign that we are indeed in the end of days?
I don't believe in the end of days. 100 years ago, everybody said the same thing. At the turn of the century, oh, it's the end of the world. Pretty much the end of every century, they say it's the end of the world. They all think it's the day of judgment. It's like that movie Poltergeist. That's what that was about. 100 years ago, some preacher told his followers it was the end of the world, and they killed themselves in the cave. And then all got buried there in that cemetery, and that's why they're all pissed off when their graves got disturbed.
So they got pissed off. They woke up and they realized it wasn't the end of the world, and they're like, hey, let's kick some ass.
Yeah, there's even a Simpsons episode like that, where it's supposed to be the end of the world and it never comes. There's a lot of stuff in the Simpsons that turns out to be real. That's the one I should go by.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said, but you have to admit there's a lot of natural disasters going on, and there seems to be a big hubbub around that Israel area.
Well, that's because that's where the first celestial being came to this world through the Stargate there. Or a portal, as it were.
That's...
Technically, well, Jerusalem just means New Salem. Back in the day, it was just called Salem. I don't know where the Jeru came from, but originally that town was called Salem. When it was first founded, it was called Salem. No Jerusalem, just Salem.
Like the Salem witch trials?
No, that's just Salem was what it's just the same name, yeah. Can't get my dog to shut up. Yeah, Salem. It's just a name. It's a word.
I have heard the theories that there are some sort of stargates buried somewhere in the Middle East.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein found one. That's where the Garden of Eden one was.
So now, if this is the case, is the world flat, and is there actually like portals to other dimensions?
Well, from the scuttlebutt I got, the Earth was blown up in 1999, and we're all in a hologram. That's why that movie, The Matrix, came out to tell us where we are now.
So
like,
it's
yeah, the Earth was real, but some dumbasses using a time machine went in the future, got tech that they didn't need to have, brought it back to the 20th century and detonated it, and it's called a chain reaction bomb. And they didn't know what they were playing with, and it blew up the entire planet. So basically, we're all in a matrix right now, just to preserve us, keep us going, keep the continuity of humanity going.
So then the movie The Matrix, it must have been some sort of clue.
There's all kinds of clues in there. We energize the matrix, and it keeps us alive. We're all dead.
Where does the Illuminati fit in?
Just everything the Earth was when it was blown up, it just got recreated into the matrix. And we're all just living in the matrix now, and for the continuity of humanity.
So they took everything that ever happened, and they kind of just inserted it into this world, so that our world now is just a mixture of everything that happened, is what you're saying.
No, just everything that ever happened before we came here is still part of our history. Everything was uploaded, or as the Earth blew up.
Oh, can you repeat that last thing you said? They're trying to cut you off again.
I was saying when the Earth was blowing up, we were all transported out of some giant alien or whatever, just put us all into this matrix so that the continuity of the human race could continue. Just like they moved the capital of the United States to Denver, in case somebody nukes Washington, D.C., we can continue the continuity of government.
Is there some way to escape the simulation?
Nope. We're all trapped in it.
So what should we do then?
Just continue living your lives like you didn't know I just told you that. Just like I'm doing. I can't do nothing about it, so I found out about it, but there's nothing I can do about it, so all I can do is just continue living my life like I didn't know, right?
But doesn't it disturb you to have all of this knowledge?
It used to. I tried to do something about it, and then I found out I can't do nothing about it. There's something controlling all of us that's keeping us from, there's nothing I can do about it, so.
You try to kill yourself?
Oh, hell no. That's an escape attempt. Suicide is definitely an escape attempt. Though I did see an interesting statistic on the news today. It said that since Robin Williams killed himself, suicides have gone up 10%. I guess that was a steady rate before that.
You know what's funny is I went to the grocery store one time, and on one of those billboard things, they had a thing you could rip off if you wanted to get the number for the suicide hotline. And like all those little strips of paper were ripped off, and I couldn't help but think, wow, there's a lot of people that are suicidal out there.
Well, that's because subconsciously they know what happened and they don't want to, deal with it. There's a lot to be said about your subconscious. It knows a lot more than your conscious, right?
So some part of us knows that the world is fake.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get out of it, but that's, like I said, it's an escape attempt. They don't know how to process the information, so that's why they do that. Apparently, I must have known when I found all the stuff I found out. I must have been capable of processing it because first it pissed me off. It didn't freak me out or scare me, but it pissed me off, and then so I tried to do something about it. And then I found out I can't do nothing about it, so get deal with it, right?
What did you try to do?
I don't know. I'm getting high on meth and freaking contacting spirits.
And the spirits told you what? That you're shit out of luck?
In a roundabout way, yeah. The only time I can actually hear them talking about me or talking to me is when I got music playing and I got the volume turned down on the radio, TV.
So they're like, Al, let us tell you about Atlantis. By the way, you're shit out of luck.
No, they don't want to tell me about that shit, just about what's going on now. I don't care about the past. All I care about is what's going on now and where we're going.
Where are we going?
The near future. I don't know yet. We're still trying to figure that out.
Is there even any point to? Because if we know that it's just a big matrix, does it even matter?
Well, see, that's why nobody's really been told about it, because frickin' it's like if everybody's a millionaire, nobody'd want to go to work, right?
I suppose you're right.
Everybody thought there was no future for us, and nobody'd want to go to work or do anything. They just want to sit around all bummed out, depressed about thinking about what could be happening, right? Instead of living our lives and trying to. So as long as we keep living our lives, then things will continue going. If we all give up, then everything stops. Then we all cease to exist. And we don't want that, now do we?
Yeah, I see how that would be a bad thing, but at some point, are we going to all escape the Matrix? Is Jesus going to come back or something?
No, you were lied to about that Jesus thing. All I can suggest is there's a website I found called the War in Heaven, the Invisible College. That's one I'd suggest everybody check out. Tells you about what's really going on here and why we're here and how we got here. How to pretty much the whole reincarnation thing and everything. Yeah, Jesus was a lie, dude. All of it. In fact, I just saw a bunch of crap on my Facebook page saying that Jesus and all the disciples were black, that all the Jews are black people, and just there's all kinds of misinformation crap out there.
I wonder if he had dreadlocks.
You mean like the Hasidic Jews?
No, I mean like Bob Marley.
Oh, well, probably for the most part, everybody probably had dreadlocks because I don't think the comb was really invented until recently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
the modern comb.
That's a good point. Probably everybody just had some caveman looking hair, but never mind that. Al, what about the human race? Is all that stuff about us evolving? Did we evolve from apes?
Originally, yeah. Well, not evolved. How about what's the word I'm looking for? Constructed from?
By who? The aliens?
Yep. By the AI that runs the Matrix. That's how we got in the Matrix in the first place. Dumbasses went in the future, got the technology, blew up the planet, and then that robbed the AI of our presence. So I'm suggesting everybody read that webpage I found called the War in Heaven's the Invisible College.
So is this
everything? Is
this artificial intelligence? Is it interacting with us right now?
Oh yeah. Controls our behaviors.
Did you say it controls our thoughts?
Well, it's like you take a man that's frickin' normally kind of docile and just not very violent, and then you insert alcohol, and all of a sudden they turn into this violent asshole. You know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you've seen it happen.
Oh yeah, all kinds of times.
Or you take a normally law-abiding person, and all of a sudden they start doing drugs and turn into thieves.
True, very true.
So something, it's either the drugs, either the being straight helps them provide or hide who they really are, and the drugs just bring their real self out, or the alcohol, or the whatever spirits, whatever is controlling everything is influencing it. I'm having trouble finding this website, though. Oh, I know.
You said it's called the Invisible College?
Yeah, it's a website. I just Googled, one time I Googled War in Heaven, and I found this website called the Invisible College. Another nice thing about having this phone is I can get on the internet and do shit while I'm talking to you and find stuff without having to push you aside.
So explain
You know what I
this
mean?
to me. Explain this Invisible College to me. What is this?
I'm trying to find it right now. Let's see. Basically, it was telling me about how these so-called demigods called theocrats go around claiming to be God, like Jehovah and Allah. And all these other gods are just demigods. But they're not really gods. They're just humans that freaking been around a while. And they, here we go. Yep. Yeah, I can explain it to you here in a second. Let me bring up this website. Okay, this important book was self-published by Kyle Griffith in 1988 and has long been out of print. Griffith's publishing company no longer exists and his whereabouts had been unknown for years. War in Heaven consists of a dialogue between Griffith and a disembodied spirit who claims to be a member of a group calling itself the Invisible College. The format consists of questions and answers. Griffith states that the answers were received by automatic writing and read back to the contacted entity for review and correction. The questions and answers that appear in the text are the result of several iterations of review and discussion. The material thus generated is both convincing and compelling and appears to be of vital importance to human society. This is a claim we see all the time. This time I submit that the claim is truly justified. The reader should be warned, this book is of direct concern to SETI. It is about religion, it is about magic, and magic at times is about sex. These matters are all about the past, present, and future situation of the human race. That was the review. And this is the parts of the book. The Search for Spiritual Reality, The Shaver Mystery, Conspiracies, the 60s, Religion and Revolution, Passport to Paranoia, The Invisible War, Breaking Point, The Breakthrough. That's the breakthrough in spiritual consciousness, like the 60s. You know, everybody was all spiritually awakening then.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2 is the theocracy, the theocrats, the theocratic bands, religious mind control, soul, mind, and consciousness, electronic mind control, the history of theocracy, the Invisible College, Satan and Buddha, the Age of Reason, a revolution in consciousness, and the Aquarian Age. Part 3, the second breakthrough, hitchhiking spirits, elementals, gods, the fifth stage of theocracy, the technology war, the last days. Part 4, the spiritual revolution, toward a general breakthrough, the spiritual revolutionary movement, spiritual politics today, the end and the beginning. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, I think so, but is there what is the main idea of this thing? Are they saying that this is the Illuminati?
No, this is the ones that control the Illuminati. All right. Recently I posted a meme or a picture that shows a reptilian dangling DNA in front of Zeta or gray alien. And then the gray alien is, like dangling a carrot in front of somebody. Then the gray alien is dangling spiritual awakening to the Illuminati person. Then the Illuminati person is dangling money in front of the business people, and then the business people are dangling the American flag and hamburgers in front of the masses. This is what the Invisible College is.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty interesting picture. Is that you said that's on your Twitter?
No, it's on my Facebook page. I don't do another Twitter and all this other stuff. I just do the basics. So this is the main. There are three main groups of spirits in the Invisible College: enlightened ones, magicians, and space people. The first major group of spirits in the Invisible College is the enlightened ones. Most of these spirits were highly advanced in spiritual knowledge and the use of their psychic powers during life. But they are also devout believers in some sect of the Eastern religious system that includes Vendetta and Buddhism. They were wise enough to refuse to join the theocratic bands associated with their particular sect after death because they could psychically perceive the enslavement and exploitation going on the various heavens. You've heard of the seven heavens, right?
Not really, but keep going.
Heavens. Well, a few of the Western occultists who have called themselves Illuminati or some other synonym of enlightened ones join this group after physical death. Most become magicians or theocrats. The enlightened ones could be very useful to our cause, but few of them are willing to stay on the astral plane and help actively fight theocracy. They consider the war in heaven an illusion and run away from it back into earthly existence, which they also consider illusory. So basically there's all kinds of turmoil in heavens, but so people come here to, they believe that the theocratic perversions of heaven, they observe there are illusions, and that perceiving such illusions proves that they are not yet advanced enough to liberate themselves from the cycle of rebirth. So they go back and live another earthly life, always hoping for the next time that they die, they will be worthy to enter the true heaven. Because when you die and you go into what you call heaven, that's not heaven. That's a fake heaven that they use to hold you until you're forcibly reincarnated. You know, like we were told, I don't know if you were told, when I was younger, I was told that it's a privilege to be here on Earth.
Uh-huh.
That you have to earn your right to come here, but actually the reality is you're forced to come here. This is a prison planet. We're all sent here to just be slaves to the AI that runs everything. And the theocrats. Like, if you're a Buddhist, or not so much a Buddhist, but if you're like, say you're a Seventh-day Adventist, there's a theocrat that created that Christian religion. And if you believe that theology your entire life, when you die, that theocrat consumes you as food. You become part of it.
So you're saying that these people that have cults or whatever, they get everybody paying attention to them, and they die, and they become a theocrat.
Basically, yeah.
And a theocrat is what? Somebody that steals the energy, harvests the energy of these people, or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. They consume it as energy or sustenance.
And what does that do? Keep them alive or something?
Well, it's just like, there's been stories I've heard where, like, the devil will eat you, and that, like, if you go to hell, the devil eats you and then poops you out, and then, your torture continues in a cycle, the same thing over and over and over again. Kind of like on the movie Beetlejuice, where they showed Hitler dressed up as a French maid, and every day at 2:00 he gets a pineapple shoved up his ass. Remember that part in Beetlejuice?
I haven't seen that movie in so long, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, they go to hell for a minute, and every day, or they're in heaven or something like that, and then Hitler shows up, or a guy dressed up as Hitler wearing a French maid outfit. Or ready for your 2:00 pineapple appointment? And they'll take him in the room, and they don't actually show it, but they insinuate that they're shoving the pineapple up his ass every day at 2:00 in the afternoon.
So basically, these people they start cults, and then they die, and then what happens when the people that are in the cult die? Do they go and be in a cult in heaven? Is that what's going on?
No, they go into a fakey heaven. They're just like when that tunnel with the light at the end of it, that's a holding center. That's a holding cell. That's the theocrat. That's the so-called your God, basically. Like the Jews have Jehovah as their God, and every time a Jew dies, that demigod or theocrat Jehovah consumes them as food.
Oh, that must be why they killed the Jews then.
Yeah. There's a new guy running for Congress. He's a Holocaust denier. I'm kind of a Holocaust denier too. You want to know why? The word Holocaust means God made disaster. Like that tsunami that hit Japan, that was a Holocaust. If that super volcano in Yellowstone goes off, that's a Holocaust. Anything created by man is not a Holocaust. Holocaust means something God threw at us. Let me explain to you what the theocrats are. The spiritual beings worshipped as gods by many religious groups are imposters. They are nothing more than the disembodied spirits of human beings who refuse to reincarnate. They remain on the astral plane where they exercise power over other spirits and over living people. We call them theocrats, a name also used to describe the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and other earthly rulers who justified their demand for absolute political power by posing as divine beings. The concept that gods are imposters is the first postulate of a theory that provides explicit answers for almost any question about the nature of spiritual reality. Part of this theory is scientific. It explains what the soul is made of and how it functions. It also explains how the body, mind, and soul are interrelated and how psychic powers operate. The rest of the theory is political. It describes the political organization of spirits on the astral plane and the relationships that different functions or different factions of disembodied spirits have with living people. The theocrats are violating natural laws when they refuse to reincarnate. The souls of all living beings are constructed to incarnate and draw energy from the physical body. This is the only natural and efficient way in which the soul can get the vital energy it needs to function and regenerate itself. Although the mechanics of this process are quite complicated, we will explain them in some detail to allow you to understand the rest of the theory. The soul is actually an astral body made up of a special form of matter. This matter is composed of subatomic particles like ordinary matter, but with different properties. Let us call this special form of matter astral matter, and the ordinary form of physical matter. The subatomic particles that compose astral matter have different properties from the particles that compose physical matter. Physicists on Earth have named and described some of these properties, such as mass, spin, and electrical charge. You also have terms like charm in your vocabulary. For properties the scientific community apparently understands much less clearly. The principal difference between astral matter and physical matter is that all astral subatomic particles possess much less mass than equivalent particles of physical matter. The charges of the mass ratios of the particles of astral atoms are about the same as those of physical atoms. In other words, the particles that compose the nucleus of an atom of astral matter have a positive or neutral electrical charge, and their mass is greater than that of the negatively charged particles that revolve around the nucleus. However, the astral subatomic particles equivalent to physical protons and neutrons are much less massive than physical electrons. Since physicists often describe physical electrons as having negligible mass compared with physical protons and neutrons, this means that the total mass of astral atoms is extremely small. Astral subatomic particles have a different characteristic that determines gravitational attraction. I'm not going to bore you with all that shit, but let's see.
Yeah, I mean, this is really fascinating, but I'm sure a lot of it is kind of going over people's heads. But I think a way to kind of dumb it down and simplify it would be to just say that the astral plane is another dimension, but in some way that it's smaller than our dimension or something like that.
All right, well, just think of Earth as at level number 4. Then level 3, 2, and 1 are different varying levels of hell, and levels 5, 6, and 7 are various levels above here that we would consider heaven from here, but they're not actual heaven. They're just holding centers.
It kind of like how some people think there's like a fourth density and a fifth density and a sixth density and a seventh density.
Yeah, exactly. They're just different levels of the astral plane. Just like the Earth is a level of the astral plane. It's in the middle.
Or some people like to say there's different vibrations.
Yeah, that's basically all they are, different vibrations.
And isn't that also the same as the Kabbalah in some ways, the Sephirothic tree?
Yep, all of it's a crock of shit just to keep us confused, basically. But like you were saying, the stuff that I was just reading to you, I understand it because I'm at a higher functioning level mentally because of what I've learned. And the reason I learned all the stuff I learned is because I was able to accept it for the most part. You know, like in that one movie with, where's all the truth? You can't handle the truth. And that's true about for most everybody. If they really knew what the truth was about this, they'd have no reason to continue living, right? As long as they're blind and to what's really going on, how things really function, they can just be oblivious and keep living their lives as if nothing was different than what they already know here, right?
Yeah, and I can see how one thing that really fits into that theory, Al, is that when people do have near-death experiences, they often see whatever their belief system told them that they would see. That's what they see. And in this theory, if you want to call it that, of theocracy, it definitely works with that. It fits right in because it explains why when somebody that's a certain religion dies, why they see those deities and they see things related to that religion because they simply believe that's where they're going, so that's what they form around them in the astral plane after they die.
Right. If the afterlife that we're expecting was real, we'd all have the same exact experience, right? We wouldn't be having experience based on our belief systems.
Yeah. When you connect the dots, it just makes too much sense. And I noticed they're trying to shut us down again.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I thought they were trying to cut me off here.
Yeah, I think they are doing that.
Yeah, because I'm telling you stuff that they don't want people to know about, because if they didn't want you to know about it, it must be real, right?
Yeah, they have synchronistic ways of interfering with the show. They're using some kind of magics to create weird little synchronistic random disasters.
Yeah, I've had a lot of synchronicity in my life. I just think of something, all of a sudden there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had a lot of that in my life. Stuff I'm working on now. Well, I got a question for you all out there. Every picture I've ever seen of a frickin' alien, an actual photograph of an alien, they're always white-skinned. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
I've never seen a black-skinned alien. I've never seen a brown-skinned alien. I've never seen a green-skinned. Well, actually, I haven't seen a green one, but you know what I'm saying? You just don't see other colors. I'm not saying that these other colors we have here are wrong, because there used to be orange people here, and there used to be green people here, and there used to be blue people, and there used to be purple people. And all the yellow man, the white man, and the black man murdered them all off over the years. Like the Neanderthal, they had blue skin. That's one thing you're not going to see in the history books. That's who the Neanderthals were. They were the blue-skinned people. There's still a little bit of the green-skinned people left in the Mongolian race. Because Mongolians, when they hit their puberty, start hitting puberty, their skin turns green on their belly and their back. But most people don't know that, because most people don't know Mongolians, and people that run the world don't want you knowing about that stuff, right?
Well, you know what else is interesting in the Scandinavia, people believed in elves, and they believed that the elves mixed races with the humans. So who knows? Those elves might have been aliens.
Here's something you were talking about religion. It says, do any of the saints in the Judeo-Christian religion become enlightened ones after death? This is extremely rare. Most of them become theocrats if they are devout members of theocratic churches during life. However, some people who claim to work miracles through faith in religious doctrine have become magician spirits after death. They are really occultists whose faith was merely a sham to allow them to work within the religious establishment. So all these so-called saints, they were scammers. They found some way to trick people into thinking they were performing miracles. I saw some stupid thing a few years ago that said the reason Jesus was able to walk on the water is because a bunch of ice cold water came rushing down the river out onto the lake at the time and froze the surface, and that he was actually walking on ice.
Yeah, or it's so many different things. Maybe he was just able to levitate using his chi, something like that.
Here's a good one. Let's see. But Jesus denied he was the reincarnation of any Hebrew prophet. He did, but it was just a simple no to the specific questions. The questions themselves presented him with a perfect opportunity to make a definitive statement denying the existence of reincarnation, and he didn't take it. This suggests that the author of the passage was an enemy of theocracy and knew elements of the great secret. So Jesus was fake too. Jesus knew a lot of stuff, and he was trying to tell people what was going on, and that's why they murdered him. He was trying to tell them about the theocrats and all this stuff, and they had him murdered for it.
He was talking about the ideas of the old religions were wrong, and the pathway to heaven and the kingdom of heaven was within. That might have been what he was referring to.
Yeah, it says, to get back to the point we were discussing, the theocrats persuade many of the saints in Western fourth-stage theocratic religion to reincarnate. Often they become charismatic preachers who win large numbers of new converts, or religious leaders who increase the power of churches over the whole of society. In the process, they may become so corrupted by earthly power that they eventually become theocrats. Like the Pope, he's a theocrat.
The Pope is a dope. He's one of the
religious leaders who increase the power of their church, right? Over the whole of society.
Yeah, the Pope is a dope.
I'd like to see the Pope on a rope. In fact, Ozzy Osbourne asked that in one of his songs, would you like to see the Pope on a rope? Do you think he's a fool? My answer to that question is yes.
Oh, yeah. What song is that?
It's on the first album, I know that.
Yeah, that line, I remember it. It goes something like, would you like to see the Pope on a rope? Something like that.
Do you think he's a fool?
Do you think he's a
Into
fool?
the Void.
Yeah. Okay,
so
yeah.
Rocket ship's turning to the air so fast.
Oh, my
I'm pretty
God.
sure it's Into the Void.
I think that Ozzy was channeling something.
All right. Like Todd claims to be a magician. The term magician is used very loosely to refer to people who made effective conscious use of their psychic powers while alive and did not voluntarily join a theocratic band after death. It is a very diverse group and the spirits that compose it belongs to many different cultures and social classes during life. Many magician spirits belong to the spiritualists, Theosophists, Rosicrucians, and other well-known Western occult groups during life. Others belong to occult groups they're usually labeled as pagan religions, such as witchcraft, voodoo, Santeria, etc. So others had been commercial fortune tellers or psychic healers. Many of the magicians in this latest category considered themselves Christians and performed their psychic activities in the name of Christ. However, the theocratic churches were afraid of their conscious psychic activities and banned them from membership, so they kept their freedom after death. See, I don't do religion. I think Christianity is a crock of shit. I think Judaism is a crock of shit. I think Islam is a crock of shit. I think they're all just bullshit. Just forms things used to control us. But because I don't do religion, when I'm dead, I'm going to be free. I'm not going to have to reincarnate here ever again. I can go to any other planet in the universe I want to.
Do you have a plan of where you're going to go?
I haven't really decided yet. I know as far away from this mud ball as I can, that's for sure.
Hey, Al, I know something. I happen to know something myself, because you were saying how on this earth there were blue people, that Cro-Magnons were blue, and there was orange people, and all kinds of different types of people. I also happen to know that there was a race of people that were dog-faced, and they were like upright walking dogs.
You're talking about like like those, can't remember the name of the Egyptian god, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they actually used to have them. Humans would fight with them, and the people that lived at the time, they actually believed that there were these dog-faced humans that lived in the wooded, mountainous areas, and they actually, one king scared another country by lying and saying that he had a division of those dog-faced troops that were on his side at the time, and the other kingdom backed down, the other country backed down, because everybody was so afraid of this race of dog-headed dog people that were supposedly very ferocious and very good at fighting. Like, they would actually use shields and swords and stuff like that. It's really trippy stuff.
Yeah, it's like in the Egyptian tombs and stuff, there's pictures of them.
Yeah.
Single pictures of Set. Well, single pictures of Set by himself, and then you see other pictures where there's a whole bunch of them, not just the one, right?
Yeah, those. Who knows what that even is? That symbolic, or were those actual beings that looked that way?
They were probably guards of some kind. Some sort of, like, this is a prison planet. Every now and then, you got to send people down here to put us in our place.
Yeah, they could have been theocrats, because Thoth would probably be one.
Yeah, they could have been a theocratic band. Just a particular theocrat's personal army. Trying to keep people under control.
And people that channel, like there's that Ramtha woman that claims to be channeling that Egyptian warrior. Well, she could be channeling a theocrat.
Exactly. Just trying to trick her and keep her blinded to what's really happening out there.
And look what's going on. That's a cult, and she's going to become a theocrat, or she already is one. And she's getting vampired off of her by some other theocrat.
Right. It's just like, I live here in Salt Lake, and the Mormons, at least when I was growing up, I was told that the Mormon is supposed to have as many children as they can, because when they die, they become a god, and all their children become their subjects. Which falls right into the theocratic mindset.
Yeah, that very well might be true for them, and true universally, because that is kind of what happens. That's kind of like how they joke on South Park and they say, guess who was really right? It was the Mormons.
Yeah, well, it's like the theocrats, well, like I said, they use that mindset of, hey, yeah, if you become one of us and believe our religion, then when you die, you become a god. And you rule your own personal heaven.
All right, Al, this has been one heck of a great discussion, and I thank you for calling in, but I just realized that we're going on like over 40 minutes now, so I better let you go, buddy.
Well, that's all right. I got myself a good plan. I got unlimited data, so I can do a lot of research now, too, on my phone.
You want to give the audience out there any last words?
Just be good to each other. How's that?
Sounds good to me. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you next time.
Correct. As Bill and Ted used to say, be excellent to each other.
Be excellent. Be most excellent to each other.
Exactly.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Ciao, bro.
All right. That was our buddy Al, who always has so many interesting things to say. I didn't want to go too long with him, because while that was an incredible download of fascinating information, and I believe it contained quite a bit of truth, I know that it is a lot to take in, so we don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole, because who knows, some people who are listening, their hair might turn white, or they might have some sort of adverse effect. So thank you for Al for calling in and teaching us about the Invisible College and the Theocrats and the Astral Plane. Very fascinating and a great addition to this episode of End of Days Radio. Remember, if you like this show, broadcast on all those services out there. Oh, we got another call already. Wow. Hello.
What's going on, Daniel?
Hey there, buddy.
How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Oh, killer. I just listened to that wild conversation with Al.
What'd you think?
Holy cow. That's Al. Got a lot of wild stuff.
Yeah, really trippy stuff. I hope that the audience out there gained something from that, because I'd have to say that was very enlightening, to say the least.
Yeah. Al's got some ideas pretty far out there. I'd love to listen to him talk. Tell me more.
Yeah, you've been doing it for years. You've been getting it right from the horse's mouth, and now the audience of End of Days Radio, now they're hearing it, which is really good stuff for sure.
Oh yeah. He'll tell you stuff sometimes you're like, whoa. I do know that. And then he'll tell you stuff other times you're like, come on.
Yeah, for sure. His knowledge base is certainly very deep. Sometimes he'll bring up stuff that I've looked into like 5 years ago and totally forgot about, and other times, just like you say, it's like, whoa, what are you even saying? That's crazy sounding, but definitely a very, very deep vault of knowledge and wisdom there.
Oh yeah, for sure. He spent a lot of years studying different stuff, and he's a very smart person. I sure enjoyed your interview with Adam Kokesh. Boy, that guy's cool.
Oh yeah, super cool guy. We're kind of buddies now, and this is the second time he's come on the show, and I really appreciate being able to work with an individual like that's got so much chutzpah and isn't afraid to, stand up to dudes that are twice his size or stand up to the government. It's really exciting getting behind him for the presidential election, and even if he doesn't win, it's kind of like a Ron Paul thing, or hopefully it can become that, where a lot of issues are being raised and the future is being changed in a positive way because people are becoming more educated.
Yeah, I love his approach to nonviolence. Come on, let's get the dialogue going here. Let's talk. Let's not fight. Let's talk. Let's see what's going on here.
Exactly. They've dumbed us down so much. We're throwing bricks at each other. Yeah, exactly. And so that's part of the libertarian philosophy and principle I've always sided with, and that's kind of the root of most of our problems here is the force issue. Government's the only body allowed by law to use force, and so if you follow that logic, taxes become unethical because they're not asking you. They're just telling you. They're taking it. And who knows where the hell it's even going?
Well, the stories of where we hear it's going are hair-raising enough. It's the $800 million that just disappeared in the Pentagon last year. Notice how they can lose $800 million, Daniel, and no biggie. Taxpayers will cover it. But if you went out and lost $800 million, Daniel, there'd be hell to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to wonder if a lot of these tax dollars are being funneled into black budget. And, as you know, there's been a few times when you've called in, we've talked about how we're both in very heavy military areas, with me being up here in the Pacific Northwest next to all these ocean inlets, and you being down there. And it's funny that you have to wonder how much of our paycheck goes to funding the triangle crafts or the invisibility technology or the sonic weapons or the mind controlled drugs or the mind controlled propaganda stuff they put out there. It's really kind of creepy when you think about it.
Oh, it's so creepy. And I think something's sitting above it. That's the worst part. The United States taxpayers are paying for some global group that's not accountable to us whatsoever. How fair is that?
It's not fair at all.
Like
it's terrible.
Like the global chemtrailing effort, that's worldwide.
Yeah, and there's this whole big program going on where they're crop dusting the skies, and nobody even has any awareness of what is going on, and they're doing it right under our noses or right on top of us, so to speak.
Yeah, they turned our sky today just that white, milky haze. Started out blue skies, were about 50 to 55 degrees. It's an unreal winter here. And then the sky's got those perfectly placed chemtrails that have completely milked out the sky now.
Yeah.
Very ugly.
Yeah, exactly. And the truth is that we don't even know if the damn Earth is round or flat.
Yeah. And then you hear these stories. Look, they just launched a car into outer space. How cool is that? Come on.
Yeah, in fact, Todd, I'm glad that you brought that up because I did want to talk about that on this episode. As many of you know, the billionaire who created the Tesla company that creates these really amazing electric cars, really fast and really energy efficient vehicles, he sent a rocket into space with one of his cars attached to it, and they filmed the whole thing, and they filmed it in space, and people were going all over YouTube and all over social media saying, ha ha ha, you idiot flat earthers, this is the proof, this is the ultimate proof.
Yeah.
There's just so many people doing that. Were you aware of any of that, Todd?
Which part they're using that against flat earthers?
What was that?
The part where they're using that against the flat earthers?
Oh, just the whole thing.
I hadn't heard about them saying, "Hey, look, flat earthers, the world's round." No, I didn't catch that, but it doesn't surprise me. But if you look at these movies, look at the alien movies, look at the one movie with the beautiful actress that went to space, Halle Berry. That looks so real. That's in a studio.
Yeah, and also there's a guy named Eric Dubay who is probably one of the most current famous flat Earth researchers, and he released a video on his YouTube channel that showed a small portion of that supposed live stream where they actually showed the car and it's sitting in a studio and it's surrounded by a studio stuff. So they messed up for a second and they didn't edit it perfectly, and some of the background got in there. So that may have already been exposed.
Yeah, whatever's going on, the propaganda, the bull crap is so deep that you can't hardly see through it. You notice when they released the files a couple of weeks ago where the Pentagon supposedly has been investigating UFOs?
Oh, I didn't even catch wind of that.
They released top secret files from 2009 where the Pentagon had a $22 million budget to investigate UFOs, and they released film footage from pilots that were chasing UFOs that couldn't catch them. And then they come out and basically made a public statement saying UFOs are there, and we don't know what they are, and we can't keep up with their technology, and we don't know who's flying them. But if that's the case, Daniel, then why did they close Project Blue Book in 1967 after 20 years, claiming that there were no UFOs?
Yeah,
and now,
this is
we're
definitely...
supposed to believe that they are there, and they've been looking into them, and they don't know who they are. It sounds like more psyops.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. It sounds like loads and loads of disinfo and misinfo and misdirection and confusion and psychological operations and who knows what the goal is there. I think that one thing that comes to mind is the idea of disclosure And are we being pre-programmed to accept an alien race that's just right around the corner, that's about to announce its presence to us and make itself publicly known and visible here in the physical spectrum, so to speak?
Well, one other thing that comes to my mind, I hear you on that, Daniel. One other thing that comes to my mind is they had the guitarist for Blink-182 running around. He wrote a book called Secret Machines that he claimed some CIA source helped him with the inside knowledge, but it's a fictional work. And he was behind the disclosure, trying to help get the disclosure going, the Blink-182 guy. Go over to Moby now. Do you remember Moby?
Yeah.
It was in the news about a month ago. He came out and said that the CIA came to him and told him that Trump was in collusion with the Russians and that he needed to help them get the word out. So they're using pop stars to try to influence people's minds about the election, about Donald Trump, about UFOs. Same old, same old.
Yeah, you really have to question when somebody like Alex Jones is getting behind a Republican.
Yeah, really. Oh. Yeah, you listen to that show, you'd think it was a commercial for the Republican Party almost.
Unless it's just all about selling more penis pills.
Well, and then there's that too. You got the penis pills and the generators, yeah.
And the MREs. Yeah, the water filters. I'm going to get one of those, by the way.
Oh, that would be nice to have one of those. But I don't want to keep you on air all day. I appreciate your show. It's been such an incredible, nice, classic end of days.
Yeah, we're going a little bit more hardcore. The audience out there has been very vocal recently about wanting to return to a format of more like a 3 or a 4 hour show. So, it's been a big wake up call. I thought the way to go was to make it really short and tight and make it short and sweet. But apparently all the fans out there, they like the format of a long marathon show. So I'm bringing it back. This is what we're going to stick to.
Right on. Yeah, I love that. I love the show, my man. So I won't let you go. Just keep up the good work, my brother. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you later, Todd the Bod.
All right. Take it easy, Danny. Peace.
Peace. And there you have it. That was Todd. Very cool talking to him. And Al, talking to both of those guys. Very good conversations with both of them. And I mean what I say. I mean what I say about returning to a format of just long. And the truth is, you don't have to listen to the whole show. You can listen to the first interview. You can listen to, or you don't have to listen to the interview. You can listen to any parts that you want, any time that you want. I'm just putting it out there for the people that are super hardcore fans of this show and complain when they don't get their 4 hours. That's really who it's for, but you don't have to listen to it all. You can listen to as much as you want. I mean, of course, my goal is to keep you here and keep you listening, right? Of course. But I'm not going to fault you if you like to listen to the show in bits and pieces. You can, if I'm putting out one show a week, I want to have enough content out there to last you at least a little while. I don't want it to be like, oh, you get 30 minutes of end of days and then that's it until a whole week from now. I mean, if I'm going to put out a show once a week and I'm not able to do shows that are bi-weekly or 3 times a week, well, I'll just put out a freaking marathon show, and the people that love their end of days have plenty of content there to spread out throughout the week, and everybody's happy. You're happy. I'm happy. The theocrats are happy out there in their false heaven. The Democrats are happy. The Republicans are happy. The Libertarians are happy. The dog-faced race of humans are happy. With their swords and their shields and their kibbles and bits. And yeah, that I just can't help but circle back to that Elon Musk live stream that convinced everybody that indeed the Earth is round. It's just another psyop. We don't know what's up there. Perhaps we do. I don't know. It confuses the heck out of me. At some point, I watched a YouTube video that said that space is fake, and it really messed with my head. So I'm either a victim of some sort of psychological operation, or I was one for a very long time, along with the rest of the world. And I'll keep studying it. I'm going to buy a telescope, and I'm going to actually look into the night sky myself. And I've also found out about a observatory here in Seattle. It's at a university, and they open it up to the public, I think, once a week. Just haven't mustered up the chutzpah to actually go down there yet, but I am going to. I highly intend to. I think it would be a great little field trip for End of Days Radio, a little field trip for Daniel, do something that is actually really intelligent rather than not ever going anywhere and just hiding out in this garage and broadcasting. There's nothing wrong with going out on a little field trip to a telescope. Who knows? It might even change your opinion of the flat earth. Oh, Lordy. So, what should I start with? Oh, man. I have a lot to get into still. And that's part of the problem, is there's never enough time to get into all of this. We're talking about a week's worth of happenings as the world turns. Apparently, once again, our president, the name comes up so much on this show and out there in general, Donald Trump. He's announced that he wants to have a huge military parade, and he wants to roll out all these tanks and have these people marching through Washington, D.C., almost kind of like one of those propaganda videos in North Korea or China or somewhere like that. And he wants to really put it all out there, and it's for the troops. I'm sure a lot of you want to hear my thoughts on this whole thing, if you even care. Who knows, you might not even be aware, and perhaps I'm making you aware. But what are my thoughts on this? I think it's cool. I mean, that little boy inside of me wants to see the tanks and the airplanes and the soldiers marching and the guns and all that. I mean, who doesn't think that stuff like that is super cool? And then that part of me that loves America, that bit of me that loves my country, I think feels like it's good to acknowledge the military. But at the same time, I think there is something to be said for kind of keeping your weapons and all of that, keeping it kind of under wraps rather than saying, hey, look what we have, because I think that we already know what we have. I think that the world knows that we have a lot of nuclear weapons and a lot of high-tech this and that, and we have all the troops and the airplanes, and now we have the drones. And what is really scary is the idea of entire drone battalions fighting each other, and the idea that casualties could get mixed up in something like that at some point in time. And all of these weapons are extremely terrifying. I don't think that it's really that great of an idea to just feel like you need to tell the world, hey, look what we have. I don't think that's a really good idea. And it sounds like a waste of money. I don't think you need to expand the military once you have nuclear weapons, because really the idea is to have more nuclear weapons and better technologies. In fact, I think a big country with a small military is scarier, because you have to wonder what kind of weapons they have, since they don't need to have a huge amount of troops out there. And if these nuclear weapons are real, like we've always been taught, that then it doesn't matter how many tanks you have or how many troops that you have, they would all get melted by nuclear weapons, which can obviously affect large areas. So I don't see any point in doing that. I think it's good for the morale of the armed forces, and if that's why it's being done, I suppose I'm all for it. But it does feel a little like fascist, I guess you could say. And you know what's so funny is that, you know, that salute where people, they touch their chest and they stick their hand out, that Nazi salute. And it's so taboo to do something like that. And it's considered to be, if you do that, you're racist, or this and that. But that's not something that comes from the Nazis or Germany. They actually borrowed that from Rome. They used to do that in Rome. And it had nothing to do with racism or anything like that. That was just the thing that they did. And the Germans, they borrowed that because they borrowed that whole culture that they had at the time. Like, they borrowed it from Scandinavia, and they took little bits and pieces of things that they liked from the past, and they used it to cast a spell. They understood how to tap into the collective unconscious and the subconscious, and use symbiology to create sigils and to inspire and to give their army power, and to build up their people into a fervor and create a blitzkrieg against all of Europe. So that's what all that is. I mean, I think Trump is highly entertaining. I do. Some of the stuff that he says, like, I just laugh. And I'm like, oh my God, is he doing that? Oh, wow. And calling Kim Jong-un Rocket Man and making fun of him, you can't help but laugh at the gall and the idea that the little guy with the rockets, he's being mocked and not taken as seriously. I do find all that super entertaining. But I have no idea what's going on out there. The things happening in Israel are very troubling. There seems to be some sort of motive or agenda there. It's nothing against Israel or Jewish people or anything like that. Of course not. It's just like you're raising an eyebrow. Hey, what's going on over there? Pieces on the chessboard are being moved around, and it does say in the end of days, nations will gather around Israel. So it makes you wonder, is that what is happening? Are nations gathering? Has the kickoff to the end times begun? Is it indeed the end of days? We could debate that forever, I'm sure. And I'm sure many would claim that there are no days to end, that the world is just an illusion. And it's going to keep going on until we escape this infinite cycle of karma or negativity or whatever is happening. And I do want to talk about this other thing in the news that I find very disturbing. Excuse me one moment. I'm going to grab my glass of water. My mouth is getting a little dry, and I realize I put it out of reach. Oh, thank you for waiting. But this fella, Quincy Jones, big music producer, he's gone on the media. He's gone into the media, and he talked to some interviewer, and he made a bunch of statements that have everybody up in arms and talking. He said stuff about JFK, like he knows more about what happened there, but he can't say because it's too risky to talk about that. And he also kind of attacked the Beatles. He kind of attacked them a little bit. He said that they were shit musicians and that they could barely play. And he really went after Ringo Starr, saying how Ringo Starr wasn't a good musician. He could barely play. But I take great offense to that, because obviously the Beatles were incredibly talented. They were playing instruments and singing and composing their music. So regardless of if they were super good at this one thing or anything like that, they were pioneers, and they were doing multiple things at once, and they were showing a great deal of talent and skill and creativity and dedication. And to say something like that just really sounds very strange, almost like you're just trying to get attention. And I've heard from bass players, that Paul is actually one of the best ones of all time. So that doesn't make sense. I know that Quincy Jones said that the Beatles couldn't play their instruments. That's basically what he said. But I believe that doesn't make sense in regards to what I've read and inside of guitar magazines and online and stuff like that. I'm not sure if he even really knows what he's talking about. I'm sure he was looking at the big picture as a music producer, and he probably doesn't even know anything about those instruments himself. So I would take what he says with a grain of salt regarding that. He also really attacked Michael Jackson. Take offense to that. He said that Michael Jackson was a thief and he was Machiavellian. And I have no doubt that Michael Jackson was a very smart guy, but he seems to really be downplaying his talent. Perhaps it's something where he feels like he's not given enough credit, so he wants to look like he knows everything and he's this great authority, and his knowledge supersedes anything that they did. Maybe that's what it's all about. I don't know, but I take offense to that, Michael Jackson. I don't think that's very nice, the things that he's saying. And what was the other thing? Richard Pryor and Marlon Brando were gay lovers. I didn't even have that one in my notes, but I remembered that one all of a sudden. Once again, just evidence that he's just trying to draw attention and throw people's names out there and drag people's names through the mud. I mean, ultimately, who cares who was doing what with whoever? That's really irrelevant unless you're, just a low class person and your mind is always going to things of that nature. Why would you even care? And why would he put that out there? So I have no idea what this man's problem is. He seems like an asshole, right? He just seems like he's bitter and he wants more credit. And ultimately, who cares what he thinks? I'm sure he's very experienced and he knows what he's doing, but it's just his perspective, and it sounds like he has a very big ego. And whatever you want to give a band like the Beatles credit for, you can't not acknowledge the role that they played and the way they shaped the culture and the influence that they had. I mean, they were the biggest and greatest of all time. I don't think that any artist or any band has really come close to what they did and the way that their music shaped society. Maybe people like Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson, or who else would you even put in there? I suppose that music has always had an effect on culture, but I'm not sure if anybody else has really affected things as much as that original movement in the 60s where, the Beatles were just right there. And that was a great time in music. But who cares? Who cares what this asshole has to say? We're giving him too much credit. Is that what it's all about nowadays? Is trolling your way into the headlines? It seems to be very easy to incite people's anger and get them talking. Hey everybody, guess what? And it's, what's funny? It's always about dragging people down. Guess what Mel Gibson did? Guess what he said? Guess what this or that person said? And who are they tearing down now? But Quentin Tarantino. They're really going after him right now, aren't they? They're really going after him. Like all these people are coming out of the woodwork. Uma Thurman is mad at him, says he pressured her into doing a stunt that now is causing her neck and back pain. Something about a car, her driving a car, going too fast. He's very pushy about it. And then there's another woman who is claiming that he ran her down and tackled her and was biting her. Just bad stuff. And I also understand that Tarantino was very adamant about defending Weinstein. So he's pissed off a lot of people because of that. And now it seems like he's the latest in a long line of people that they're tearing down. I gotta say, I love the guy's movies. I've always been a big fan of his movies. I collected them all on DVD and Blu-ray. I think that those movies are just so entertaining. They're some of the best films that have ever been made. And it really is sad, and it really hurts to hear about news like this. It really hurts my heart. It's just sad. It's just sad. As somebody that was really a fan of his movies, it's sad to see him and Uma Thurman not getting along and fighting and having those issues. And it's sad to see that his name is really being dragged through the mud, and perhaps he deserves it. Who knows? I'm sure that he's a guy that's obsessed with making films, and he's gone to some dirty lengths to get things done. And that's sad. I don't know about tackling women and biting them, though. Unless it was something to do with making a movie. I don't know. Was that during what was that vampire movie, From Dusk Till Dawn? Is that what she's talking about? Was he a vampire? I'd have to look that up. But it's sad. It's just sad. The Me Too movement. More and more of these women are saying that these guys are getting up in their boundaries and using all sorts of quid pro quo type of motivations to get them to do things. And it's sad because you realize how it actually is out there, and it makes you think of that show Mad Men, where it shows back in the day where everything was super sexist and women were always getting sexually harassed. And then you see that and you're like, oh, I guess it's still kind of like that. It's sickening, and it makes me feel bad as a guy. It really validates that feminist perspective, and that kind of sucks that that men are being made to look so bad in general by people like Bill Cosby and Weinstein, and there's so many. I couldn't even name them all. But really, guys, have some self-control over yourselves and quit using your positions of power and authority in the world to create these quid pro quo situations. If you're doing that, you're really just a lowlife. You're a loser that can't connect with women, so you're doing things like that. I mean, let's be honest. That behavior is really just pathetic. To think that you would go to such great lengths to create success for yourself in your life just so that you could attain some position of power of that nature. I suppose that's probably what has fueled a lot of these people, is they wanted to increase their status so that they could attain more sex and more pleasure for themselves. And I think sexuality motivates a lot of people, but it's really sickening to see that the world is really like that, and that sort of thing goes on, and there's really no defending it, unfortunately. And hopefully we will hear more about women that are sexually harassing men, so that the scales get balanced a little bit more. I forgot to ask Adam Kokesh a question. Supposedly when he was in jail locked up, he had women that were like, doing the pat downs and watching him as he was trying to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. I mean, women prison guards, like they weren't respecting that sort of boundary. And that's pretty disturbing. But, he's going to be back on here, so we'll save that one for next time. Pretty funny, right? I heard a news story, I think it happened here in Seattle, of some woman that went into a guy's house and raped him. That was crazy hearing that. Like, you never hear stuff like that. And I apologize for even talking about such offensive things, but it does seem like most of the sexual predators are men, doesn't it? It's kind of interesting when you see a story like that, and it does seem like as time goes on, more women are acting predatory like that. I have noticed that too. They're still not anywhere near caught up to the guys, but that seems to be happening more and more too. And maybe it is more evidence that we are indeed in the end of days. I gotta at least get to one of these news stories too. Let's pick one that's really creepy. Okay. Well, sorry about this. I'm having trouble pulling up my little link. Let's do it on the computer instead of the iPad. Thank God I'm surrounded by so many multiple forms of technology. So this is from drudgenow.com. It says, woman found holding her eyeball outside South Carolina church. Comes from Anderson, South Carolina. Authorities say a woman was found holding her eyeball outside a South Carolina church. Anderson County Sheriff Chad McBride tells news outlets that it took 2 or 3 deputies and 2 emergency medical workers to subdue the woman to start rendering aid. A retired minister who helped the woman, Reverend Terry Mitchell, says it appeared she had intentionally hurt herself on nearby railroad tracks. He said the woman looked young and struggled against people who were trying to help her. The sheriff's office and deputies responded to assist emergency medical workers, and no crime was committed. The woman was airlifted to a hospital. South Main Chapel and Mercy Center worker Elizabeth Hyatt says the church held a debriefing to counsel those who had seen what happened. Okay, so... Holding her eyeball. She pulled her eyeball out. Ooh. Is she trying to one-up the guy in Philadelphia who is eating horse poop? Was she possessed by a demonic entity that simply wanted to terrify people and absorb their fear energy? Is she just very mentally ill and she thought that something was going on that wasn't? Like there was something inside of her eye, or perhaps it hurt, or for some reason she believed that it needed to be removed because her eyeball was possessed. What could it be? There's so many things that could have happened there. And hopefully they'll ask her and they'll find out. I can't help but feel that there might be something occult going on there whenever I hear stories like this. I wish I had the funds and the time where I could assemble a team and go down there and investigate. But sadly, I can only read about it to you out there. But it does sound like there's some sort of occult-ish type stuff happening. Like some sort of dark energies. It reminds you of that movie Event Horizon, where that spaceship, they go through a portal to hell and they come back. And things are all crazy and people are ripping their eyeballs out. That's got to be one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Like, if you guys want me to name the movies that terrified me the most, probably Event Horizon, The Exorcist, Poltergeist was pretty scary, and probably The Ring. Those 4, I would say those movies scared me the most. And The Exorcist is definitely up there. I mean, that movie is fucked up, period. I don't care what generation you're from, when you're watching it. A lot of these horror movies seem pretty lightweight and lame next to the sheer suspense and horror of that movie. I mean, there's a point when they become stupid, right? Like the 50 billion Paranormal Activity movies, or all the Saw movies, or the Hostel movies, or The Purge and The Purge 2. I like The Purge, though. I love The Purge. That's a cool series. And I don't mean to say that at least the first of most of these movies weren't good. One that I really liked was Cabin in the Woods. Kind of had a Cthulhu type of Lovecraftian feel to it. If you haven't seen that, check that out. Okay, so we read a news story. We better read a letter from a fan before we get too far along. This first email comes from Dalton. It says, Daniel, is it true that you have psychic abilities? Is it obvious that you are just crazy and probably need attention? ? No, I mean, I suppose there's always the chance that it's just my imagination and I'm crazy, but I have had what felt like psychic experiences, resonating with people's emotions, feeling their emotions empathically, and even feeling at times that I was connecting with them mentally. Sure, that's happened to me plenty of times, as well as dreams that seem to predict the future, as well as just little bits of intuition during the day and synchronicities that seem to point to something that's going to happen. Sure, that's happened plenty of times. And things have gotten even crazier than that. There was a time when I was on mescaline and I was counting cards. I wasn't counting cards, I was just flipping them in my hand. Like I was looking at the backs of them and trying to guess the fronts. And I did like 4 of them in a row. And I put the deck down, I stuffed it back inside of my box for my cards, and I freaked the fuck out and just walked away from it. And a lot of you out there are going to think I'm making stuff up and I'm lying, or it was just an incredible coincidence, but it happened. It's just one of those weird woo things that goes down that freak you out and make you realize that a lot of this stuff is real. And I could get even crazier than that. Crazier stuff than that has happened. But I will save that for another day. Hello. Sorry about that pause. Got interrupted there. I do apologize to our live audience. I will edit that out of the podcast version that gets released. I do think it's probably time that I drew this show to a close. I do apologize to those out there that were hoping for a show that was a little longer, but we're at 3.5 hours, so I think we've gone quite long enough. I just noticed what time it was. And I do have more stuff here, more stuff that I could talk about, but I don't think I'm going to get to all of it tonight. I did, however, want to do the mind-blowing moment of the day. I know a lot of you love that portion of the show, so I would never skip it before drawing things to a close. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I like to have an instrument when I do these, so please hold for one moment while I grab something new that I purchased. Okay. Are you guys ready for this? I hope it doesn't hurt your ears. Alright, it's time. It's time for the mind-blowing moment of the day. Yeah, man. You're blowing my mind. Yeah, reptilians are real. I got the reptilian blues. Yeah, sorry. I just kind of went off there. But anyways, the mind-blowing moment of the day, I would say, would have to be, I like the Adam Kokesh, the stuff about peaceful conflict resolution. I can't help but feel like that was incredibly helpful to all of us that really feel a need to deal with situations in a way where we can avoid looking like we're weak, but still get a point across without having to reduce ourselves to violence or idiotic behavior. And I think this does apply to the people out there that are doing foolish things like breaking bottles and breaking windows and spray painting things and, going about things the wrong way, in that violent way. I think there's something to be said about being peaceful and showing your intellect and actually showing the world out there that you're in the right. That's basically what it's all about. So a big thank you to him for coming on the show and filling our minds with so much great philosophy and thought. And also, I think that there needs to be another notation there that Al calling in and talking about the invisible college and all of that stuff, I think that's pretty crazy. I think that all of it's very fascinating, and there's quite a bit of truth there, so shout out to him for sharing that with us this evening. Also, remember to subscribe to End of Days Radio on all the various services out there, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. You can go to endofdaysradio.com and just stream it from there. Get us on the TuneIn Radio app. Just search EODR. Get us on Facebook, facebook.com/TheRealEndOfDaysRadio. Remember to follow me on Twitter. That's @NinjaShoes. Remember to... Oh, man. Going through all this stuff. I always leave something out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's always that. I do plan to release some video content soon. I've got some plans in that regard, possibly going on some field trips and stuff like that, just short videos. I don't have that much time where I can do a whole production. Most of my efforts go into this show, so stay tuned to that YouTube channel. And I'm going to do it too. Don't think that's just some BS teaser or anything like that. And remember, you can always email me at danielendofdaysradio@gmail.com. You can email me anytime. And hey, that's everything I've got for you, everybody. Sorry I couldn't make it to that 8-hour mark this time. I'll try next time. But I do want to thank you guys for listening to this show. It really is all about you. It is. And this show is purely to entertain you. It's all about the fans. It's all about the listeners above anything else. And I appreciate your feedback. Keep sending me that feedback over social media. Remember to email me. Don't be afraid to share your thoughts with me, how you would like to hear the show be shaped or what types of guests you would like to hear on. I definitely love hearing your feedback. Or if you just want to chit-chat, don't be shy. Don't be intimidated by my good looks and my charisma and my intellect. I don't mind. You can email me anytime. That's danielendofdaysradio@gmail.com. And also, I want you guys to know that we're a family. And we are riding this ship into the night, this black ship, the End of Days Radio vessel that flies through the outer limits of the galaxy into realms unknown, into other galaxies and other dimensions. We are all one out there, remember that? We are all one mind, like that Tool song goes. So when you close your eyes at night, remember that you are not alone, because I am there with you, the captain of this black ship, as we sail into the night, and we watch the stars die as we absorb their fading light. Oh, another good one. Another good one. Good night, everybody.
But Fuck yeah.